Are we ready to proceed? Good afternoon and welcome to this online hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the City of Ottawa. The Committee of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial tribunal appointed by City Council to make decisions on certain types of applications under the Planning Act. My name's John Blatherwick and I will be chairing this hearing today. With me are my fellow members, Stan Wilder and Heather McLean. Please note that this video conference is being live streamed on YouTube. The video will be archived along with today's agenda on the city's website. Before we begin, we have a few items to outline for your information. While the issues surrounding development in the city are broad, our mandate is quite limited. The committee cannot consider aspects of the proposal that are not related to the required variances: noise, pollution, property maintenance, property values, prosecution for illegal construction, personal comments regarding neighbors, agents, or applicants, additional variances without proper public notice. If there is an identified need for an additional variance or variances, including an increase in the extent of the relief required, a recirculation of the application is required. As part of the statutory public notification requirements, each applicant was required to post a sign on the property and file a statutory declaration confirming the sign posting. And I note in the speaker's list that we have none of those, which means that before we deal with the merits of any application, I'm going to have to administer an oath of solemn declaration to either the agent or the applicant. Regarding quorum, if this is lost during the hearing due to technical difficulties, the proceedings will be paused to allow time for the resolution of the issue. Failing the ability to reinstate quorum, hearing of the items remaining will resume at the outset of the next regularly scheduled meeting of the committee. In terms of the hearing process, listed on the agenda and appearing on the screen are the applications we will hear today. For the sake of efficiency, the committee may deal with agenda items in a different order. Note that the committee members have reviewed the application materials prior to the hearing and any written submissions received in support or in opposition. In addition, the committee will hear today oral submissions from any interested parties as part of our proceedings. The committee may ask for a brief presentation by the applicant, followed by questions from the members where clarification may be needed. The public submissions portion of the hearing will then begin, and any interested parties will be invited to make their submissions to the committee. Panel members may then ask follow-up questions where added clarification may be required. When you are called upon to provide your comments, we will ask you to do the following. Starting with stating your name and municipal address. For the record, we may ask you to spell your name. Then begin your submission by addressing your comments to the panel members. You may ask questions, but please direct them only to the chair. Please limit your comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at the committee's discretion. Once all interested parties have an opportunity to address the panel, the public submissions portion of the hearing will then be closed. The committee will then make an oral decision to either grant or deny the application. The committee may also choose to reserve its decision. In such case, the panel will deliberate further on the evidence presented immediately following adjournment of the public hearing. In either case, the committee will send within 10 days of its decision, and to all the parties and to those who have requested it, a written decision that sets out the reasons for the decision. All decisions of the committee are subject to a 20-day appeal period, during which the decision can be appealed to the Ontario Land Tribunal for a fee. And before we begin, are there any declarations of interest for any of the panel members for this panel, panel 1 today, panel 2, or panel 3? Seeing none, okay. We have no minutes to confirm, so we can now move to the adjournment requests. And we have 3 items where we've received a request for adjournment. And the first item is items 4 and 5 on the agenda, 250 Rochester. And this has been requested by the planning department. Ms. Lenker is there, I believe.
Hi there, good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Lenker, the departments, please articulate the department's request for the adjournment.
Yes, Mr. Chair. The balconies that are proposed on the stacked dwelling face the front and rear facades. However, these balconies are in line with the southern facade, and as a result of the requested interior side yard setback reduction, these balconies are not in conformity with the zoning bylaw, which requires a minimum 1 meter distance from any lot line for balcony projections. So therefore, the applicants will need to either apply for a minor variance for the balconies projections or revise their drawings. As well, the balconies are required to have a screen that should be reflected in the elevations.
Okay. All right, so there's one variance that needs to be, one more variance needs to be applied for.
Yes, that's correct, Mr. Chair.
The agent, I believe, for this application is Ms. Thompson.
I'll be speaking today. My name is Erin Duncan. I'm at 404 McKay Street, and
Okay.
I'm the agent for the applicant.
Okay, you're aware of the department's request for adjournment?
We are, and we agree with the adjournment, and we will just add the one additional variance
Okay,
to the plan for the balconies.
all right. Any idea how soon you can facilitate this?
We plan to get revised drawings to you this week.
Okay.
So we would request that we can be on the next earliest meeting.
Well, if everything can get wrapped up fairly soon, we need the materials to us for the 13th of this month if we're going to make the July 6th hearing.
July 6th is the earliest?
Yeah, July 6th, yeah.
Okay, yes, we can do that.
All right. Okay. So the department feels that we can deal with this on the 6th of July. There'll be no problem getting.
Yes, that shouldn't be a problem, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right. Okay, so all in favor of adjourning this application until the 6th of July, and it's subject to recirculation. Okay. All right. Okay.
Thank you.
I shall see you next month. Right. Next application, which is up for adjournment, is item 9 on the agenda. This is 50 Gilmore Street. And this adjournment was requested by the applicant's agent.
Hi, good afternoon.
Ms. Daoud.
Yes, we would like to request an adjournment to the July 6th hearing if possible. And this is just to provide further time to coordinate back and forth with Hydro, just to confirm that their requirements are being satisfied with the proposed design.
Okay. All right. And the department's all right with this as well?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right. And what kind of discussions are you having with Hydro, out of curiosity?
Through the comments that were received in the initial circulation, Hydro just provided their typical comment that the requirements for setbacks from the existing pole that's along the Gilmore Street frontage are being satisfied. So the architect just needs to confirm, and they've been in contact with preliminary discussions with Hydro so far. It's just taking some extra time just to do that additional, have them review the plans and confirm that they're satisfactory.
Okay. All right. Any questions, comments from the other members? You all in favor of adjourning this application until the 6th of July? All right, application's adjourned. We'll see you next month.
Great, thanks so much.
Thank you. That concludes the adjournments requested. However, we'd like to pull up item number 7, which is 476 Wilbrod Street. And if Mr. Hamilton is there.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Hamilton, this is a minor variance to permit a reduced westerly east of the interior side yard setback. That's an extension to an existing 3-story rooming house in the Sandy Hill neighborhood. You sent us correspondence this morning that indicated that there was a requirement for this property to go through the site plan process, and that did I read this wrong, that this process has really not begun? You have not received any submission?
That is correct. This application will be subject to site plan control. There is currently an application being submitted, if I'm not mistaken. I might ask the applicant to clarify that, but it has not received a first round of comments. It hasn't gone on circulation yet.
And is the department comfortable that we're going to ensure functional, safe, and compatible development on this site, given that we'd be dealing with the variances today if the site plan review process is really not begun?
It is our general preference that we receive at least a first round of submission comments, just to make sure that there are no outstanding issues that might impact the variances. Ultimately, it is up to the applicant.
So
from our
a
perspective,
brief adjournment would probably be in order,
likely.
because you just might impose conditions which will increase the number of variances needed.
It may be beneficial, yes.
Okay. Is the applicant there, the applicant's agent? Item number 7.
Yes, I'm here.
Mr. Hopkins, your address for the record, please.
423 Bronson Avenue.
All right. You've heard from the department on this, and quite frankly, this committee has dealt with these kinds of matters before, and I personally agree with the department that it'd be far better to have at least a couple of rounds of discussions with the planning department before we deal with variances to this. So, would you be in agreement to adjourning this until that situation has taken place?
I'm actually going to have Michael Paxiato, who's the architect. He's going to be speaking on the behalf of this project. So.
Is he there?
Yep, he's joining now, Mr. Chair.
All right.
Everybody, can you hear me now?
Yes, Mr. Paciato.
Okay.
To an adjournment to resolve any issues that may arise.
I understand the situation. We did have the pre-site plan control meeting. We did get some guidance based on that sort of process. It is through that we understood that we could proceed with the minor variance. But if you're cautioning us that there might be more coming out of the site plan approval process, then maybe the wise thing to do is to adjourn.
Well, I would suggest to you that the wise thing to do is to adjourn until you've submitted and the department has had an opportunity to review what you've submitted, and you've had some back and forth on this. I know the members of the panel would be a lot more comfortable if we were dealing with a variance that's going to be the last variance on the property, and I'm not looking at anything further down the road because of the site plan control process.
Okay.
And my question is, how long would that take?
My understanding is we're a matter of one report being missing in order to satisfy the site plan approval process. It's the geotech report. So a week or so, hopefully. So could we possibly look at the 7th of July as the date when this comes back? Would that be sufficient time? Well, we're certainly motivated to get this done as soon as possible. So I hope so, yes.
And Mr. Hamilton, how long would it take the department to review and reply?
If we would be looking for a first round of technical comments, I don't believe we would have those in time for July 7th.
So maybe the best thing to do is to adjourn this sine die, and then we'll have a better, then we're covered. Your thoughts?
To myself?
Yeah, no, to a sine die adjournment.
That might be the best option and give them the most flexibility.
Yeah. Mr. Pacciato, if we adjourn sine die, and then you can get this back on as quickly as the process takes.
Understood.
Okay. All right. So what we'll do then is we'll adjourn this application. Any questions, comments from the members regarding this adjournment? Okay. Adjourn the application sine die so that we can get through at least one round of response to the submitted site plan. All in favor? All right. Applications adjourned sine die. Thanks very much. Bear with me for a second here. All right. We'll now move on to the regularly scheduled section of the hearing. First item we'll deal with is item number 1 on the application list. 434 Fraser Avenue. This application for minor variances to permit front yard parking and a reduced parking space length. The owner wants to remove the existing and non-conforming slope driveway and below-grade garage and establish a new at-grade parking space in its place. And the agent for the applicant is Mr. Jones. Is he there?
Yes, I am. I seem to be having some connection issues, but yes, my name is David Jones. I'm representing the company Amstead Design Build for 434 Fraser Avenue.
Okay, and your address for the record, please?
My address here is 7725 Llewellyn Drive, Stittsville, Ontario.
And before we begin, I have to administer the oath. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
Yes, I do.
All right, so So briefly, oh, I should note, there's an amendment to variance A as per the planning department, and it now reads to permit a parking space to be located in the front yard, whereas the zoning bylaw states that front yard parking is prohibited unless it is determined to be the dominant pattern along the streetscape. You're aware of that modification to variance A?
Yes, that is correct, Mr. Chair.
All right, if you'd like to make a presentation, please, on your application.
Yes, so the house at 43 Fraser Avenue has a below grade parking, and the below grade parking has been a concern with the homeowners, that it's become a safety concern of backing out of the laneway into the street. And our application is to remove the below grade parking and allow for level ground parking.
Okay. All right.
Perfect, thank you for the visuals.
You have any streetscape evidence that you can show us, showing us the?
I don't have any official of the streetscape, but I did fill out the forms attached, and we went through the streets, and out of all 18 people on the street, there's no other below grade parking on that street. So this is why we are asking for a minor variance to bring the parking up to grade level.
What is the dimension of your parking space going to be?
The dimension of the parking space proposed is the smaller parking spot, which is a 2.6 meters by 4 meters, and that fits within the setback requirements on the lot.
So that means that you're going to have a vehicle encroaching on the city right away.
Correct. Yes, very, very visual on the slide up now.
And have you discussed this encroachment with the planning department?
Planning department, yes, I did discuss this, and they were opposed to any suggestions that we brought up.
Ms. Linker, if you wouldn't mind articulating the department's position on this application.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. The proposed driveway deviates from the streetscape character analysis as it's not consistent with the streetscape's dominant characteristics. Therefore, the proposed minor variance is not compliant with the zoning bylaw. In addition, staff also have concerns about the potential encroachment and negative impact on the pedestrian and vehicle use of the public right-of-way.
Right, and in situations like this, does the department normally require an applicant to file an encroachment permit?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
And well, we'll get back to Mr. to the applicant's agent. Have you been in discussion with the department regarding obtaining an encroachment permit?
No, it was not. I was not aware of that. But we can look into that.
So how many other houses on that street have this kind of a situation?
The below grade parking? None.
No, if this is approved, this type of parking situation where there's a substandard parking space in front of the home.
That I'd have to look into. We did not look at the neighboring properties if they were small parking or reduced parking at this time.
Sounds to me like you need to talk to the city regarding the necessity of an encroachment permit on this application.
Agreed. We will look into that.
Mr. Wilder, comments, questions?
Sorry. Can you hear me now, I guess?
Yep.
I understand, and this is there were other properties at one time which had garages below grade on the street, I gather. And I guess, did any of them, do you know, did any of them reestablish, or did they ever, did any others use the side yard to put the parking on the side as opposed to the front? Do you know, sir?
The only houses that I can see side yard parking at are at the houses facing the opposite streets at the two far ends where they have some side parking. But we were not sure of any properties that were actually allowed or filled in their laneways to allow parking.
Thank you.
Ms. McLean, questions, comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I got 3 questions here. Was this dwelling originally constructed with the sloped driveway, and if so, when?
Yes, I believe the house was constructed like that way. The age of the house, I would have to pull up paperwork. I do not know off the top of my head. I apologize.
What is the slope of the driveway?
The slope is more than 8%, which is allowable.
So perhaps to the planner or city planning department, there's a steep driveway provision. Was that investigated as part of this application? Do you know, or?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the steep driveway provision or section within the zoning bylaw was read during the application. However, it's noted that the property is within Area X and therefore no off-street parking is required for this lot. So, yes.
Okay, just to follow up on that then, to the agent, Mr. Jones, did you investigate whether or not you could fill in the driveway under the steep driveway provisions of the zoning bylaw?
We did look into it, and this is why we are up in front of the minor variance, because we were told that the city would oppose it. So we are applying for that permission to fill in the laneway.
But under the steep driveway provisions, correct me if I'm wrong, are you not allowed to fill in the driveway, excuse me, if your slope is in excess of 8%?
I'd have to go back and check our correspondence with the city, but they told us we would need to apply for a minor variance.
Okay, then I guess what is the distance between the property line and the paved portion of the road?
That dimension is, sorry, the property line and sorry.
So the paved portion of the road. So your parking space is going to be 4.4 meters in length. I take it that's measured to the property line.
That is correct.
And then normally there's the driveway extends to the paved portion. There's the city part of the driveway.
That's correct. That is.
What's that length?
That additional length is, I'd have to double check, and I'm just doing that right now, but I believe it is more than 10 feet.
So when the car is parked in the driveway, it's going to be in excess of the parking space length of 5.2, even though that requirement is for the private property.
Correct.
And what kind of vehicles are they parking? Are they parking one vehicle or two vehicles?
One vehicle at this time.
Okay, and I guess your cover letter said that there was additional landscaping to be installed to enhance the appearance. Can you just describe that?
The additional landscaping would be just a walkway to the front door, and there has to be a window put in where the garage door is, so it's just a window well. But that's the only enhanced landscaping.
Okay, and just to confirm with you then, the distance of the driveway would be 4.4 meters, which I'm going to convert to 14.4 feet plus an additional 10 feet
Correct,
on city property.
correct.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to say I'm still not clear on why you don't qualify under the steep parking provisions in the zoning bylaw, but I'm just going to leave it there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So, Mr. Jones, how does this variance meet the 4 tests of the Planning Act?
The 4 tests. The 4 tests, the overall of this project serves to enhance the safety of the home of the family. Basically, the first test, the proposal is minor, but it neither proposes a large change of the performance standards, nor does it deviate from the established characteristics of observed on the street. The proposal does not create a new building typology nor a pattern of development that would elevate its importance. Second, the proposal meets the intent of the official plan. The addition will maintain and improve the existing dwelling unit within the general urban area, making use of the existing developed infrastructure. The removal of the retaining walls and stairs means adding to the neighborhood greenscape and existing grading. Third, a single-family home within an R1 zoning will be maintained. Additional requirements such as additional front yard landscaping will enhance the existing appearance of the home and are in compliance in the underlying zoning. And finally, the fourth, the proposed development is both appropriate and desirable use of the subject land. The existing home will be enhanced to be made safer, which is our main concern, meaning it will continue its current use without need of an out of character addition or replacement.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Any other comments, questions from the members? Oh, all right. I think we'll reserve on this application, and you will receive our notice of decision within 10 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Next application, we'll deal with our our items 2 and 3 on the agenda, 245 and 247 Percy Street. These are consent and minor variances to divide the lot into 2 to permit northerly interior side yard setbacks, reduce lot widths and areas. The 2 existing detached dwellings are to remain. And I believe the agent is Mr. Pert. Is he there?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Before we begin, let me administer the oath. You solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time.
Yes, I do.
So, very briefly, Mr. Pert.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Could I have my first slide, please?
Yeah.
My request is for consent in 2 minor variances for the lot municipally known as 245, 247 Percy Street.
Mm-hmm.
The purpose of this request is to sever as a technical severance 2 existing detached homes, both currently located on 1 legal parcel, which is a non-conforming lot.
Okay.
These houses were built over 100 years ago on 2 separate lots and since merged to form 1 lot on January 28th, 1980. My intent is to sever them back to their historical property lines. It is my plan to keep these houses in their current structural layout, providing basic cosmetic upgrades to ensure they are maintained in good repair and original charm and character, which will contribute to the health and well-being of the Centertown community. These houses will remain as residential homes in use. By severing the lot, each house will have its own legal parcel and ownership. Independent ownership will provide the opportunity for each property to maintain its original urban pattern and site design while being inhabited by separate families to support the growth and density that the city is envisioning. Could I have the second slide, please? Thank you. The dwelling at 247 Percy Street is identified as Part 1 and Part 5 of the draft reference plan. This is actually the lot to be severed. The second dwelling to the left at 245 Percy is identified as Part 2, and this will be the retained lot. Part 3 and Part 4 are the existing easements for vehicle and pedestrian access to these properties. I have also created an easement for Part 5 in between the two properties for access and maintenance of the southerly side of 245 Percy Street. Could we now go back to the first slide? Thank you. I do believe that the 4 criteria have been appropriately met. Minor in impact, the physical dimension of these two homes will not change in size or shape. Desirable. These houses will go back to their historical property boundaries and will preserve 2 low-rise homes without changing any existing or adjacent build forms. Intent and purpose, the houses are existing and demonstrate they can function within the proposed lot area. Adequate separation between the buildings are provided and access is not hindered. General intent and purpose of official plan, by severing these lots and restoring the historical lot lines, this will allow 2 existing homes to be owned by separate families to help rejuvenate the Centertown community. The official plan allows for a range of dwellings. These houses complement the surrounding land use. We will also, that as we move into implementing the new official plan, which encourages smaller lot and higher density, we should also reach back to allow 2 older homes to contribute to preservation and maintaining the character of the community that is in transition, allowing a piece of historical Ottawa integrate with the new. A few other important notes that I would like to mention is both of these houses already have separate services, and all neighbors, community association, ward councillor, forestry, city are supportive of this request. In closing, I do have concerns regarding the condition 3 and 4 being proposed, which are the noise attenuation study and building code limiting distance. I believe Mr. Hamilton has sent the committee new wording that we worked on today to alleviate some of those concerns regarding the noise attenuation, and we have agreed on those. And then condition 4 would be the building code limiting distance. And I completely understand if these were new developments, but these are existing homes that have been lived in for 100, possibly even 120 years by owners and tenants. And they've been living and maintaining these without any issue. This shows that they can functionally exist as is. And I don't want to stand in the way of the approval process, but I would like the committee to reconsider imposing these conditions. That concludes my presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Pert. Mr. Hamilton. So we've modified somewhat the 4 conditions that the department requested. Independent services, I'm understanding is still there. Joint use and maintenance agreement, pretty standard stuff as well. Noise attenuation study has been deleted, or is it?
We provided amended wording today based on conversations with the applicant. Engineering staff have confirmed that we can change the noise study to a noise notice on title based on the sources of noise.
And as far as number 4 is concerned with the Ontario Building Code distance requirements?
Number 4, staff would prefer that this condition stay. This condition does come from Building Code Services, and it is intended to ensure fire safety with the Ontario Building Code.
Okay, that's what I figured. The committee, I think, would also prefer to add a condition to the 4 that are in our report, which is that we grant these for the life of the building regarding variances A and D. And those are the side yard provisions, I believe. Yeah, an interior side yard on one property and the interior side yard on the other one. Mr. Pert, I'm assuming that you're going to have to make modifications to the house if you have to meet the Ontario or Building Code limited distance requirements.
On the southerly side of 247 and then on the northerly side of 245.
Yeah, well, I think I don't know how the other members feel, but I think the committee needs to defer to the experts in the planning department regarding these matters and leave that condition as is. Any questions or comments from the members of the committee? You had a comment, Mr. Pert?
I respect that, and I appreciate all your time, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and we're just going to add number 5 regarding the life of the building for the side yard variances.
Yes.
All right. Okay. With that said, with that modified text for the conditions and the additional conditions, ready to vote on this application. All in favor? Application's approved.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Next item on the agenda is item number 6, 610 Wavell Avenue. And there's a minor variance to permit a reduced interior side yard setback. Owners wish to construct an attached front-facing garage and extension of the second story above the garage and a new addition in the rear yard as part of renovations on the property. The existing carport is to be demolished. And the agent for this is Arjan Sewer.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
Good afternoon. Your address for the record, please.
Yep, my address is 43 Eccles Street, Unit C.
Okay. And very, very briefly, what are you proposing?
Well, we have some presentation slides, so I'll take you guys through a brief presentation. All right, so good afternoon, Honorable Chair and members of the committee. My name is Arjun Soor, and I'll be presenting this application for a minor variance at 610 Wavell Avenue. So with me on the call today is my colleague Christine McQuaig and the property owners Bao Long Hong and Patricia Call. Next slide, please. So the subject property is located on the west side of Wavell Avenue in the Laurentian neighborhood. Next slide, please. So the property is designated a general urban area in the current official plan and a neighborhood within the inner urban transect in the new official plan. The property is also zoned residential first density subzone O in the zoning bylaw. Next slide, please. So this is just an aerial image of the site. If we could go to the next slide. So the property has an area of 464 square meters, a width of 15.23 meters, and a depth of 30.48 meters. Next slide, please. So again, these are just some images of the subject site. If we could go to the next slide, please. So the proposed development is to construct a one-story addition in the rear yard and to demolish the existing carport and construct a new attached garage in place with an extension of the second story above in the interior yard. The garage will be within the existing carport's envelope, and the second story is noted as being compliant with the required interior yard setback. And the proposal improves the existing dwelling and allows for the continued residential use of the property by the current homeowners. Next slide, please. So this image just shows the proposed site plan, and you can see the additions hatched in blue there. As you see, the proposed side addition there occurs entirely within the existing carport's envelope, which is the green hatching that you see there. So as you see in the image, it thus maintains the existing setback and doesn't encroach any further than the current carport does. Next slide, please. So these are just the proposed building elevations. If you go to the next slide. So the requested variance is to permit a reduced interior side yard setback of 0.74 meters, whereas the zoning bylaw requires a minimum interior side yard setback of 1.2 meters. Next slide, please. So I'll now move into discussion of the four tests, beginning with whether the variance is considered minor. So the proposed addition is considered minor as it occurs entirely within the envelope of the existing carport. The proposed 0.74 meter interior yard is a contextual setback in urban areas such as this, where 0.6 meter setbacks are actually pretty common. It should also be noted that the second story is stepped back from the wall of the first story where the garage is by 0.46 meters, which ensures that a compliant 1.2 meter setback is maintained above the first story. So that separation is still provided above the first story. And I'd also like to note that there's no windows on the first story, so there's no loss of privacy that's expected to occur in that regard. Next slide, please. So these images just touch on what I was talking about in the previous slide. So you can see here that there's quite a common provision of similar interior yard setbacks along Wavell Avenue. So on the right-hand side, you see that the lots outlined in red are those that have a similar interior side yard setback to the proposed development. And then the images on the left, you can sort of see how that looks from a streetscape perspective for some of these lots. And what this basically shows is that the proposed interior yard is not only quite common along the street, but it's not going to be any more impactful than what you see in these images right here. Next slide, please. So the variances also meet the intent of the official plan to accommodate a diversity of residential and non-residential uses and ensure housing choice. The proposal allows for the continued permitted residential use of the site while providing more living space for the current homeowners and enclosed parking and item storage in the garage. It also meets the official plan's intent to be compatible with neighboring dwellings and demonstrate good urban design, as the enclosure improves the streetscape by removing cars from the streetscape, and the additions are appropriately scaled to the lot, and they won't adversely impact neighbors. Next slide, please. So the variances also meet the intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. They meet the intent of the required minimum interior side yard setback to ensure that adequate space is provided between buildings for light filtration and access. The amount of accessible space in the interior yard is no less than the existing condition. And since the second story is stepped back an additional 0.46 meters, as I touched upon before, that 1.2 meter setback requirement is met above the first story and allows for there to be adequate light filtration and space between the buildings. Next slide, please. So lastly, the variances are considered a suitable and desirable use of land as they provide more living space for the existing homeowners through compatible additions and the continued provision of sufficient landscaping on the site. The proposal also meets the intent of both official plans and aligns with the intent of the R1 zone. Next slide, please. So based on this, it is the opinion of Q9 Planning and Design that the proposed minor variance constitutes good land use planning. Next slide, please. So that concludes my presentation. I'll now be available for questions along with my colleague Christine McQuaig and the property owners as well.
So you're of the opinion that the 0.74 side yard is adequate for maintenance along that along the length, the depth of that extension.
Yep, I do think it. I am of the opinion that it's adequate. I mean, as I mentioned before, this is a similar type of setback that we see in the neighborhood, and they're able to do that maintenance. But there is also a compliant interior yard setback on the other side as well.
Yeah. All right, thank you, Ms. McLean. You had a question, comment?
Mr. Chair, before we go any further, can we get the oath read for this item?
Oh. Before we finish. I have done this before. Innumerable times, apparently.
No worries.
Anyway. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies, excuse me, for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
Yes, I swear.
Yeah. Okay. Ms. McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to clarify the variance. So it's for the north interior side yard?
Yes, that's correct. It's just for the north interior side yard. The other side yard is compliant.
And is the other side yard provide full access to the backyard? There's no reason why you couldn't get to the backyard?
Yes, absolutely. So that side yard would provide sufficient access. So, if you're taking out a lawnmower or something, you'd be able to do it on both side yards. But yes, currently the second side yard or the southern side yard does provide that access. Yeah.
And then with respect to the variance, again, the reduction is for the proposed garage alteration only.
Yes, so it's for the side yard addition, which would be the side addition, as you see there. Yeah, it would be the garage. Yeah.
Because the second story of that side addition conforms.
Correct. Yeah. So the second story is just an extension. It would be built above the garage, of course, and that's an extension effectively of the second story, and that would be in compliance with that 1.2 meter requirement. Yeah.
So to clarify, the variance would be to permit a reduced northerly interior side yard setback of 0.74 meters for the proposed garage. Is that correct?
Yes, for the garage addition and the side yard. Yes, for the northern interior lot line.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. McQuaig, you had a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify in terms of the space for access on that northern side yard. If you can pull up the images, but the actual, the way the carport is structured, there's actually kind of a half wall on that exterior side, the northern side. So it's actually partly a wall already. Yes, if you look at the bottom right image, you can see that there's actually a brick wall built up on the side of the existing carport. So there's already that sort of boundary condition that establishes the 0.74 for access on this site already. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Ms. McLean, any further?
Sorry, no, Mr. Chair, thank you.
So we will amend the variance to read to permit a reduced northerly interior side yard of 0.74 meters, et cetera, to just make it a little more accurate.
Okay.
All right. And by the way, Laurentian neighborhood, you people still have to really stop using the Ottawa neighborhood study. This has been McKellar Park for over 50 years, and it's an incorporated community association.
I'll keep that in mind for the future. Thanks.
Yeah, well, the unfortunate thing is, like, unlike the old days, we don't have proper neighborhood maps anymore. Anyway, with that said, we've modified the bylaw or the amendment to be a little more specific. Ready to vote on this? All in favor of the application? The application's approved. Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
application we'll hear is item number 8 on the agenda, 86 James Street. These are minor variances to permit front yard parking, reduced parking space length, and a single driveway to be located on a smaller lot width. The owners of smaller width lot, sorry. The owners have installed the driveway in front of the semi-detached dwelling and would like to legalize the parking situation on site. And the agent for the applicant is Ms. Smith, I believe. Ms. Smith. Before we begin, let's go through the oath so I don't forget.
I would like, sorry, I would like the, excuse me, Chair. I would like the owner, Derek Armstrong is here with me, and he will provide the oath.
Okay. Mr. Armstrong, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I swear.
Okay. All right. Get that out of the way. All right, Ms. Smith, there's, I should ask Mr. Hamilton. She's there. So if the committee understands this correctly, Mr. Hamilton, this driveway was constructed in front of this property in 2020.
I don't have the exact date, Mr. Chair, but it is an existing driveway.
But then there was a notice of violation provided to the owners in 2021.
Yes, that is correct.
So that driveway was constructed without the benefit of a building permit.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right. All right, Ms. Smith.
I just want to clarify that it's not a depressed curve. It's more like a paved patio area, and they have not been using it. But I'd also like to introduce Thuy Nguyen, who will be making the presentation today for us.
Ms. Nguyen, okay.
Oh,
I'm not able to hear her.
She's on mute.
Oh, I apologize. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Thank you very much. Could you please, so my name is Thuy and I would like to present the minor variance proposal for 86 James Street. Can you please move to the next slide, please? Our purpose is to legalize existing yard parking, which was constructed to accommodate the elders and a child with disabilities at the property. We would like to demonstrate that the proposed development satisfies the 4 tests, which are minor in nature, desirable to the use of the applicant's land, and maintains the general intents and purposes of City of Ottawa zoning bylaw and the official plan. It is compatible with the surroundings, promoting a healthy and inclusive community and supporting intensification. Next slide, please. This is Mr. Zhang and Mr. Huang, 77 years old, the elder of the family, and Mason, 15 years old, the child with a hearing and autistic disability. Next slide, please. This is the letter of support from our surrounding community from the immediate neighbors, 80, 82, 84, 86, I'm sorry, 88, 87. Next slide, please. James Street neighborhood was developed between the late 19th, early 20th centuries with inadequate parkings for the need of increasingly growing local community. Over 30 front yard parking was established and legalized throughout the 2000s period. According to the zoning front yard parking report, by the Planning and Environment Committee on February 9, 2006. Next slide, please. This is the existing front yard parking pattern on James Street. The first photo is 84 James Street, the adjacent property to 86 James. Their parking was legalized in 2005. Next slide, please. The residents of 86 James Street are a multi-generation family with 2 working parents, 3 young children, and 2 grandparents. 86, 84, 82, and 80 James share a rear yard parking with a narrow access route and inadequate parking space. 86 James family has high frequency of traffic, between 3 to 5 times per day on average, due to children's schooling and other family daily needs. Heavy traffic in the rear yard has raised concerns over the safety of the seniors and young children. Next slide, please. The elder parent both have periodic doctor appointments, so there's Mason for his child therapy for his deaf and autistic disability. Next slide, please. As a result, the existing pavement was widened to bring the car closer to the front entrance and thus ease the picking up and dropping off of the aging and disabled family members. It also allows future wheelchair accessibility. Next slide, please. In this survey, the yellow marked line showing the easement limits. That's to say, the easement limit, and we can see the less than 2.4 access route. That's to say that if their neighbor built a fence along the easement limit, it would be almost impossible for 86 to navigate into their parking space. Next slide, please. So in this diagram, we show the turning angle, and the inadequate turning angle for cars would likely result in potential collisions with the 2 mature trees at the rear yard. And we can also see different obstacles along the way, such as the existing deck, the cars that are parking in the rear yard. So it really makes the journey to the parking of 86 an adventure in a daily basis. And at the top left corner of the diagram, we show the front yard parking within the property limit. The owner car is 4.2 meters in length, so it fits just within their property. And we also show, a large 3-meter buffer zone from the pedestrian pathway. Next slide, please. So in this diagram on the left side is an existing front parking from 86 James neighbors. The symmetrical pattern is being emphasized with landscape in both the front and rear yard in our proposal. Next slide, please. So the proposal not only satisfies and exceeds the soft landscape requirements. By moving the parking to the front, the total soft landscape is increased by 50%. Amenity area become available as a result. Next slide, please. The zoning strategy paper in April 2019 proposed zoning changes to regulate the low-rise residential infill in the general urban area. Discussed the allowing the front yard parking in the mature neighborhoods overlay. In this paper, the city staff concluded that the proposed front yard parking arrangement would provide more landscape, which would increase the permeability and thus would be beneficial for on-site stormwater management. Next slide, please. In this photo, we see the less than 2.4 meter effectively on one single narrow driveway with electrical facilities projecting onto it. Next slide, please. The rear yard The rear yard is jammed with cars. Even each family needs to move cars multiple times per day. It is proven inconvenient to the community daily needs. Next slide, please. A tree was damaged by cars in 2021 and was removed, and we are worried about the remaining 2 trees at the rear yard. Next slide, please. The snow piles obstruct access during winter months, and we really would like to communicate with you that this is a real need to 86 family given this situation, and having elders and disabled family members have to move in snow and ice. Next slide, please. So we would like to discuss the streetscape character. Since 86 is adjacent to a church at the intersection between James and Kent, we would like to propose a 20-lot streetscape towards the left side of 86, as shown in this diagram. Next slide, please. This is a view that shows the properties with existing front yard parking on James Street between Leon and Kent. Can you go to the next slide, please? Again, front yard parking patterns on James Street, as you can see, just from the left, 84, 96, 94, 111, 113 James Street. Next slide, please. Another currently existing front yard parking on James Street on the same block. The fourth test. The variances are minor due to the existing site conditions. Second, the proposed development is desirable for this property. Third, the proposed variances maintains the general intent and purposes of zoning bylaw to provide a wide mix of residential forms and be compatible with the existing land use pattern so that the residential character of the neighborhood is enhanced. The variance requested maintains the general intent and purpose of the general urban area of the city of the official plan. It also complies with the goal of the new official plan. Which is providing housing which meets the needs of disabled persons, senior citizens, and other groups with special needs. Next slide, please. We received the feedback from the planner, and we just would like to respond that for the trees critical root zone concern, we have the infield forestry review, and we understand that there is no concern over the front yard tree. We actually worry about the potential of damaging the rear yard trees rather than the front one. With regard to the drainage concern, the pattern is unchanged, and we have a slope towards the street as shown in our survey. Evidently, no drainage issue has happened since the establishment of the pavement. For the parking space, we provide adequate front parking space as shown in the previous diagram. With regard to the development desirability, although front yard parking is discouraged according to the current planning guideline, we believe that it is not contrary nor does it conflict with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw and the official plan. It respects and supports the growth direction of the central town neighborhoods. It also compatible to the neighborhood characteristic, and most importantly, it is proven desirable to the development of the land as demonstrated above. I would like to, we also, next slide, please. We have a video shows the struggle of the 86 James residents at the rear yard. Now, we're not sure whether we have time doing so, but I'm just wondering whether we could show the video. Otherwise, I would like to let the owner of 86 James and the the neighbors to speak their opinions.
I don't think we need the video, quite frankly. We can just listen to the property owner.
Yes.
They can articulate the the situation they have in the rear.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to thank you and your colleagues for hearing our case today. We recently moved to the downtown to join the Centertown community and to contribute to its variety of life and culture. We've connected with many families on James Street, and I'd like to thank them for being with us today to support our application. We have many family responsibilities, especially with 3 kids at 3 different schools. There are medical appointments for our elderly parents and geotherapy for our deaf and autistic son. As well as unplanned transport to school when buses aren't running, as we experienced after the storm last week, for example, and also to activities that aren't available in Centertown. We don't have the luxury of choosing public transit all the time, particularly without exposing our high-risk parents to community transmission of COVID. We need safe and reliable access to our vehicle in order to fulfill these responsibilities. The relief you grant us will ensure that we aren't walking our parents down icy sidewalks, in some cases for blocks at a time in the winter, or risking our children getting out into oncoming traffic. As you've heard today, there's no room to navigate or to park at the back of our home. It was designed before cars existed. The right-of-way doesn't let us access our backyard. If we were to try to do that and to enforce that right-of-way, we'd be in a constant fight with our neighbors. And if they fence that area, we may not even be able to access at all. Similarly, a front yard parking space won't have any meaningful impact on what our street looks like. The residents of nearly every single family or semi-detached home on James Street, they park on in front of their homes or on their driveways near the sidewalk. We're just asking to do so legally, whether or not our neighbors' parking is legal. So the relief that you grant us with your approval today will let us integrate safely into our new neighborhood and enhance the long-term livability of our home. Thank you very much.
Okay. Mr. Armstrong, you put that driveway in 2020.
That's correct.
Did you understand that you needed a building permit to do so?
Mr. Chair, I wasn't aware that we needed a building permit for our front driveway or patio, but if we did, I do stand corrected.
And the notice of violation you received from the city was as a result of a complaint?
Yes, it was the result of a complaint, Mr. Chair.
This is a complaint from a neighborhood resident?
That is correct. Well, I believe so. I actually don't know who made the complaint, sir.
Well, and that information you'll never find out anyway. That's protected information. Okay.
But that's from the beginning when we just move in. Nobody knows our parking situation at the back, because we don't even know who make a complaint. But today, our neighbor here, we move in, we talk to people, we realize we don't have enough room and we're struggling parking in the back. So.
Yes,
you do have permit parking on that street, do you not?
No. So that's an excellent point, Mr. Chair. There is the possibility of permit parking, but however, the city instructions for applying to it do exclude us from eligibility for on-street permit parking. It says in their website, one of the first eligibility criteria is that you must not already have access to parking at the rear of your home. And so because we do technically have access, we're not eligible to apply for that on-street parking.
And we were informed by the city that we may not get the permit. They informed us.
All right. Okay, thank you. Ms. McLean, you had a question or comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to clarify the dimensions on the site plan of the parking space, of the proposed parking space. So the vehicle would be parked in front of the stairs. And if that's the case, what's the measurement from in front of the stairs to the property line, and the other measurement from the property line to the sidewalk?
your question. So from the stair to the sidewalk is 25'3" or 7.71 meters.
7 point, sorry?
7.71. That's from the stairs to the sidewalk.
So you come down the stairs and you come into the front of the vehicle. Is that how it's proposed? You're going to walk down the stairs and the vehicle is going to, the front grille is going to be right there? Or is it over to the side? I'm just not clear on how that vehicle is being parked.
If I may, Ms. McLean, we have a space to park the vehicle away from the stairs, but also away from the sidewalk. Certainly within the 0.5 meters required, I believe, by city bylaw to stay away from the sidewalk and not impede pedestrians or other traffic. But that does give us space to move safely around the vehicle and not have the vehicle blocking the stairs also. It's a nice fit. It's not a snug fit.
I think it would have been helpful to have a properly prepared plan that shows the exact location of the parking space in conjunction with those stairs and how it's going to fit, with dimension from back from the sidewalk. If you say you're meeting the 0.5 meter requirement. So when I look at this, the variance request for the length of the parking space, it's 4.33 meters. And I look at the site plan and that seems to be measured from behind the stairs.
Yeah.
So I'm just not sure it's clear. Is the parking space to the side of the stairs?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. This parking space is effectively to the side of the stairs, leaving a clear path, almost like the edge of the edge of the parking pad would be akin to a walkway directly in from the stairs to the sidewalk.
So I think that would have been helpful to have the plan show what part of this 3 meter wide area is walkway, and then what the dimension of the parking space is going to be. So the width of the parking space beside the stairs to the lot line is how much?
Meters.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just on mute. I just wanted to note your audio cut out for me for a moment, so I heard the width from the walkway to which dimension, ma'am?
So if the parking space is beside the stairs, what is that width from the edge of the stairs to the lot line?
So to the edge of the lot line, I would be estimating the dimension, but the stairs are about 3 feet wide, and to the lot line, I believe that we would have about another 7.5 to 8 feet to the property line. The parking space itself is 10 feet wide. So with the width of the vehicle, we would have an opportunity to park to the right-hand side of the parking pad, leaving sufficient space to the left-hand side to access the porch between the stairs and the sidewalk.
So I think it would have been helpful to have the walkway and the parking space delineated, shown separately, the dimensions of the parking space beyond the property line. So the dimension from the property line to the sidewalk, and I guess to know what kind of vehicle you're driving. So I think you're missing some information here that would have been helpful, but I'm just going to leave it at that. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Ms. McLean. I would note that we do have a diagram in the presentation that shows the dimensions of that front pad and shows the dimensions of the vehicle as it would be parked on that front pad, including being entirely on our property and not encroaching the city property. Thank you.
So maybe we could bring that up again. I just wonder if staff could just show that again, please.
No.
Twee, I might beg you to find the help refer to the slide for the committee members. So Ms. McLean, this is a good indicative or illustrative slide for this. If you were to imagine the vehicle parked slightly to the left on this position, realistically, we would park our Kia Soul slightly forward from that, just to not encroach on the stairs where they are actually constructed. And then in terms of the practical access, there would be some space in front of the vehicle, which would be the city boulevard. There's quite a wide space in front of us between the sidewalk and where our car is currently depicted.
So with this plan, it looks like the car is occupying the area where the stairs are. Am I correct?
That's correct where it currently is, but I'm going to defer to Susan here too, if I might.
Yeah, I'd like to clarify that this is the exact size of the model of the car that I used in this drawing, but I think the sidewalk should have been a little wider, or the paving area should have been drawn a bit wider. If you look at the survey plan, it actually does show the stairs and the width of the walkway. Yeah, I agree. We should have, if you look up here, yes, you can see the exact width of the paved area and the stairs on the survey plan.
So what again is that width beside the stairs where you want to park? So you're not parking the car directly in front of the stairs, you're parking it to the side. What again, I'm mismarking that down, the width of the parking area between the stairs and the property line where you're going to park?
So the area between the stairs and the property line, I would estimate at about 7 to 8 feet. However, realistically, Ms. McLean, we would not park back next to the stair to the side of it because I don't believe that there would be enough space on the parking pad itself. We would be parked slightly to the side and in front of the stairs, just to ensure that there is sufficient walkway to move from the sidewalk to the front stairs. And the parking pad is sufficiently wide to do that.
But is that 4.33 variance not measured to where you're saying now you're not going to be parking?
So the 4.33 is measured to the property line. So
from the front of the porch.
That's correct.
But you said you're not parking beside the stairs. So you're not.
That's correct, Ms. McLean, and hence why we're seeking a minor variance today. We're looking to be able to park on the pad in front and do so in a way that's safe and not encroaching on the sidewalk.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, I'm going to suggest that maybe we need a better plan, more detailed, sort of to distinguish exactly where the parking space is, what the dimension of it is, where the and it shows the walkway and what the dimension of the walkway is. And the only other comment I would make is that one of the photographs I think we saw a number of cars in the backyard. So obviously they can get down that narrow driveway, that right of way, and there's and get in with a vehicle. So I'm not sure that the argument that you can't get in is valid in this case.
Mr. Chair, if I may, our neighbors who are also sharing the backyard with us have joined us today to provide some indication, not just from us, but what it's like with the shared parking in the past, if we may promote them.
And I also want to add one point is we're sharing the same backyard, but all the other neighbors, the direction they park is different with us. 86 Gems is the only one need to turn. So they don't have problem to driving or park there, but only us, we will have a problem parking to the right side.
That's fine, but I think Ms. McLean raises the point that we have a presentation which is free of some critical dimensions that we need to make an adequate decision.
Yeah.
And I think, quite frankly, the best thing to do at this point before we finish with these discussions is to possibly adjourn this until the next hearing, until you can provide us with a more detailed plan that shows exactly where the car is going to be and exactly what the size of the reduced parking space is that you wish. Because quite frankly, providing a parking space with a set of stairs in it, no, it's we need a better schematic that tells us exactly what we're being asked to approve before we can make an informed decision.
Mr.
However,
Chair,
if you wish us to proceed, we'll proceed, and you run the risk of being denied.
No, but we also have a neighbor with us, and we also have some.
That's
support.
fine, but we need a more detailed plan. There's confusion as to what we're actually looking at. There's some confusion as to where the car is going to be. This is, you've already, this is not a legally established parking space. This is an illegally established parking space. So I think you need to do due diligence in this instance is an absolute requirement. So I think the best thing for us to do at this point is to push this back. I think the first, Mr. Secretary Treasurer, do we have space in the first hearing in July?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so let's just push this back a couple of weeks, folks, and provide so that you can provide the committee with a more detailed schematic. And then we can proceed with this application at that time.
Thank you.
thank you for your time, Mr. Chair.
Right, so I'll push this back to the 6th of July, and then we shall reconvene.
Or Mr. Chair, there's a June 15th hearing. I don't know if that's.
Oh, was that this June? Well, I question is June 15th. Well, yeah. Could you make a June 15th hearing, providing us that information by then?
Yes, for sure. Definitely.
Okay, thank you, Ms. McLean. Okay. So that's 2 weeks, June 15th, and we'll be back and we'll have our final discussions on this application.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next application on the agenda for items number 10 and 11, 107 Prince Albert Street. And these are consent and minor variances to subdivide the property into 3 parcels for a 3-unit townhouse row with reduced lot areas and rear yards, and a reduced lot width and a non-complying driveway. And the agent for this application is Mr. Kirsipu. Is he there?
Hello?
Hi. Your address for the record, please.
Is 17 Montcalm Street in Ottawa.
Okay. And we'll administer the, excuse me, the oath. You solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time.
I so swear.
All right, then this is, okay. So we've had a number of revisions to this application, and it's back before us again. No concerns from the planning department. So if you could give us a brief presentation on what is before us today.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could I have the presentation, the first page, please? So Numbered Ontario Company, as owner, is applying for consent to allow the creation of 3 lots and the minor variances which will facilitate the development of 3 new townhome dwellings at 107 Prince Albert Street. We believe that the proposed development maintains the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, conforms to the City of Ottawa official plan, is consistent with the provincial policy statement, and creates appropriate built form and density for the subject site. And the next page, please. The subject property is designated general urban area in the official plan and neighborhood inner urban in the new official plan. The property is zoned R3M, which accommodates townhouse development. The site has 18.29 meters of frontage on Prince Albert Street and is currently occupied by a single detached dwelling. Prince Albert Street has R4UC zoning 2 blocks east of the site. May I have the next page, please? The site is located within 950 meters of the Tremblay LRT station, is a 4-minute walk from the bus stop on the Vanier Parkway, a 3-minute walk from the bus stop on Queen Mary. The site has easy access to the Vanier Parkway and Highway 417, but the site is also located within a 15-minute walk from the Rideau River Park and Pathway, shopping on MacArthur, Coventry, and the St. Laurent Shopping Center, schools, and employment areas. May I have the next page, please? Adjacent to the west of the subject site is an infill semi-detached dwelling with lot widths of 5.79 meters. The immediate neighborhood within the R3M zone has numerous examples of new infill semi-detached development on smaller lots, and the adjacent R4UC zone on Prince Albert has examples of 4 townhouse dwelling rows and 10 townhouse dwelling rows on Lola Street. One street south of the site is a new mid-rise apartment building with 276 units. Next page, please. Immediately north of the subject site is a 3.05 meter wide lane owned by the City of Ottawa, but not maintained. This lane, as you can see within this diagram, has been encroached by the neighbors with fences and structures over the years. Next slide, please. This is a picture of the rear lane of this property that you will see the board fence along the back, as well as the neighbor's fence on the side of the property to the west, being built directly at that, abutting the rear fence. Next page, please. The proposed development will replace the existing detached dwelling with 3 townhouse dwellings. Each dwelling is configured to have an attached garage with a driveway from Prince Albert Street. Visitor parking is provided on the driveway. 57% of the lot width is green landscaping at the front. And the interior unit B, being part 3 on the draft R plan, will have right of access over part 1 to access the rear yard. Zoning compliance. May I have the next page, please? The R3M zone permits townhouse development, and except for the rear yard setback requirement, the proposal meets the front yard, side yard, and building height requirements of the building mass. The 1.2 meter side yard setbacks are greater than the adjoining properties. The minor variances requested are the minimum required lot area for townhomes under the R3M zone is 180 meters squared. The minor variances requested for each lot area. Unit A is 167.9, Unit B, the interior lot, is 137.1, and Unit C is 168.0. Lot widths. The minimum required lot width is 6 meters. Proposed units A and C exceed the minimum. However, the proposed lot width for the interior Unit B is 5.3 meters and will require minor variance. The 18 meters of lot width available here would allow 3 6-meter lots and no variance requested. However, with 1.2 meter side yard setbacks, the actual building dimensions of 3 units would vary substantially. The required rear yard setback is 7.24 meters. The rear yard must also comprise at least 25% of the lot area. So the variances that we're requesting for the rear yard setback and area are rear yard setbacks of 6.26 meters for all 3 units compared to the 7.24 required, and 24.2, 24.2, 24.2% lot area compared to the 25% of lot area required for the rear yard. We note that the adjacent property at 105B Prince Albert has a rear yard setback of 4.9 meters, which was built prior to the changes in the zoning policy. If we were to include the amenity area provided by 50% of the encroached rear lane, the rear yard setbacks and area would comply with the requirement under the zoning bylaw. The driveway width. Infill zoning provision table 139 indicates the lot width of 6 meters or less, no individual single driveway is permitted. The proposed unit B has a lot width of 5.3 meters and will require a variance to permit the proposed single 2.6 meter driveway. The infill zoning provision section 139, minimum required aggregated soft landscaping is 30% per lot. We note that the proposed unit B, which requires the variance for the driveway width, will have 49% soft landscaping area and comply with performance standard, as do the other 2 lots. The total soft landscaping for the front yard of the subject site is 57%, surpassing the required 30% and providing a greener face to the community with 3 new trees. The adjoining property at 105B Prince Albert is a semi-detached dwelling with a lot width of 5.79 meters with an individual driveway and 11% soft landscaping at the street. The 4 tests of the Planning Act. The minor variances requested for the proposal will permit the construction of a 3-unit townhouse project. We believe that the variances are minor. The proposal conforms with the neighborhood built form and lot fabric, and the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw is maintained, subject to the requested minor variances. The proposal will provide discrete intensification within the neighborhood. The proposed townhouse dwellings have been designed with ground floor office space to allow residents to work from home. The site location and proximity to public transit will increase ridership, make efficient use of existing infrastructure, municipal services, and will help to reduce consumption of land and other resources outside the urban boundary. The proposal conforms to the City of Ottawa official plan by supporting the identification of the subject site in a cost-effective pattern, utilizing existing services, infrastructure, and transit. The proposal contributes to the range of housing types and densities in a neighborhood within the general urban area. The new official plan designates the site neighborhood within the urban transect. These areas are anticipated to maintain their low-rise nature and shall accommodate growth to meet residential densities of 60 to 80 dwellings per hectare. We note that this proposal represents 63 dwellings per hectare. The proposal is consistent with the provincial policy statement, as the proposed development is appropriate for the neighborhood and promotes cost-effective development by intensifying lands within the urban boundary, reducing land consumption, and municipal servicing costs. The proposed development represents appropriate intensification and meets the provincial policy statement. Subsequent to the final planning review, we were informed about our error in proposing 2nd-story balconies with a projection greater than 1.2 meters into the rear yard. We have removed the rear balconies from the plan and included the revised site plan and elevations reflecting their removal. If I can have the next slide, please. We received comments from the rear neighbors about the balconies and the cedar trees at the rear. The balconies have been removed, and the tree disclosure report details the plan to protect the cedars. We also like to address the concern of the Overbrook Community Association regarding trees and green space. Please note on the tree disclosure report that we'll be planting a new tree in front of each home and the soft landscaping at the front of the site is grass with planting that represents 57% of the total front yard. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Kirstu. Did you provide us with a consent rationale?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
The planning rationale?
No, consent, severance rationale.
Um,
3 requirements for us to when we're looking at consents, whether or not the consent is consistent with the provincial policy statement 2020, whether or not the plan of subdivision is a plan of subdivision is not needed for the proper and orderly development of the land, and whether or not the proposal has adequate regard for subdivision criteria in section 5124 of the Planning Act.
I have not. I will note that the type of dwelling being townhouses is permitted within the zoning bylaw. I will note that I don't believe a subdivision agreement is required for a 3-unit project within the interurban core. And I'm sorry, I missed the last one.
It's section 5124 of the Planning Act. There's 14 criteria in there that talk about things like adequate servicing.
There is adequate servicing on the street. The full municipal services are available for this site. The site has sidewalks. There are transit is located nearby. Adequate hydro is overhead lines for the 3 units.
In future, I'd suggest that you reread the subdivision application form that we have online, because it very clearly states that there are criteria. And that's something that we require, unless you want to go through the subdivision approval process, which I don't think anybody with a small project like this really wants to have to endure. Okay, any questions from the panel? Ms. McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the table that you provided in the cover letter regarding the lot dimensions in the area. It points out that the middle unit will be the smallest lot width from the municipal addresses that you put in your table there. I'm just wondering if you had given any consideration to equating the 3 units, like asking for lot width variances so that they're more equal in size, or why you went with the proposal the way you've put it in.
Thank you for the question, Ms. McLean. The reason why we did that is so that we can build 3 equal-sized homes on the site, rather than varying the size and width, the widths of the individual properties to respect the 1.2 meter side yard setbacks required on the exterior of the 3-unit block.
The middle unit is going to be the smallest lot on the street, according to your table. And I'm just wondering, so you've got 2 larger outside units and 1 smaller inside, and why you chose to go that route?
Right. The lots are a different size, but the actual building footprint, the width of the actual homes being built are equal for all 3 of them, with respect that the interior unit doesn't require the side yard setbacks. So the actual building widths are 5.7 meters, I believe it is, of each individual townhome.
Okay, I understand now. Yes, thank you for that. And is this the only 3-door row on the street then?
That's correct. This is the only lot that is anywhere near 18 meters. This is an 82-foot lot, whereas the footprint of the neighborhood is usually 50-foot frontage lots.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from the members of the committee? Nothing, Mr. Wilder. Right, you're aware of the conditions that the city is requesting?
I am.
Well, I'll just go through them. Cash in lieu of parkland. Owner applicant agreeing to implement tree protection and planting plans. Existing dwelling removed and existing services capped. Independent services confirmed. Grading and drainage plan. An accessory structure demolished and or relocated. Development agreement for an asphalt overlay and a joint use and maintenance agreement.
We are in concurrence with all of those. There were additional comments that were added in the planning synopsis that we had 2 comments to, but that's it. We're happy with those, the conditions that you've listed, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, and one of your neighbors has raised an issue regarding a hedge between the properties. Has that issue been resolved with the abutting neighbor?
The issue is, as I understand it, the cedars at the rear of the property.
Mhm.
And those cedars, as per that tree disclosure report, there is a protection process in place to protect those cedars. We are providing construction fencing within the critical root zone of it to ensure that they are saved.
And that's been communicated to the abutting neighbor?
It has. I informed them and they were happy with that. And they were happy with the fact that we removed the 2nd-story balconies.
Yeah, yes. Yes. And so is the planning department. You have to keep them happy too. All right. Okay. So we have revised site plan, revised elevations in this today. The planning department is satisfied with the application. You're aware of the conditions. Right. We're prepared to vote on this application. All in favor of the application as provided or as amended? Application's approved. Good luck with your project.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and the committee.
Next application on the agenda is item 12. And this is 284 Churchill Avenue North. This application was adjourned from October the 6th and 2021 and May the 18th, 2022. For further discussions and modifications. Your minor variances to permit reduced lot widths, reduced lot areas, and a front-facing garage for a new semi-detached dwelling. The owners want to demolish the existing 2-story detached dwelling to construct a semi-detached dwelling. I believe Mr. Gavran is the agent.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I am.
All right. I'll just administer the oath before we begin. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
Yes, I do.
All right. So what has happened since the last time we met on the 18th of May?
So since the last time we met, we had another conversation with the community, with the neighbors, with the city planner, and with the tree protection department.
Okay.
We tried to resolve most of the issues that we had. Some were technical, some were opinions. Opinions, we couldn't really do much, but the technical aspect of the tree protection, retaining walls, site access, drainage of the water and what have been resolved.
Well, if you'd like to proceed with your presentation, please.
Yes, I believe I added a file just for the presentation so we can all follow.
Okay.
Excellent. So as you know, this is our project 284 Churchill Avenue North. This is the existing house. It's been built, there's like 50, 60 years, mold in the basement, poor living conditions. You can go to the next slide. What we'll find here is the side driveway to the back of the yard leading to the garage. We'll find also the retaining walls that retain the grounds, but the tree and its roots as well. Again, this house is an old house that we would like to demolish and build something new. You can go to the next slide. So basically what we're proposing is a semi-detached dwelling. This will be a new build, meaning all the modern equipment such as geothermal, heating and cooling, solar panels on the roof area, R2000 certified design. We will also minimize the carbon footprint, and it's going to offer better living conditions for multi-generational families, meaning now we can diversify and intensify the build and the area. The modern design was inspired by the neighborhood. There's a variety of architectural styles, but it's mostly a modern style that's been used throughout the neighborhood. We'll see that in the later slides. Our front yard meets all-inclusive design standards. Internal design, of course, can be also inclusive, meaning universal accessibility for everyone. With that, we are also providing new tree protection for the existing tree. And basically, that's all what I want to give you as information for now. I would more like to go and take a look at the comparisons and where we derived our idea for this design. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So basically, this is the community that we looked around, what was being built, what's the design style, what everybody's doing. So this is basically on the right-hand side, you can see the neighborhood that I outlined. And on the left-hand side, you can see one of the examples that would be on Beach Grove Avenue. Just on this first image, you can see almost a 3-story design. Almost the front landscape has been reduced to almost asphalt and parking. Not something we want to do, but I just do want to bring your attention to that. Flat roofs with a 3rd story on the 3 stories, the building. We can go to the next slide. On more comparable projects, these would be on Churchill Avenue. Left-hand side, again, the garage, we have it front-facing garages, garage in the basement level, 3-story build with an access on the roof, flat roof. On the right-hand side, we can see a similar design, a lot of windows, front balconies, front-facing garages. Now, this is a better example of landscaping, but again, these properties do lack the trees that were probably on site that we're trying to recuperate or to leave the existing one. We can go to the next slide. We got, again, more projects in the similar design area. I prefer the right-hand side where we, again, have a 3-story facade, front garages, front entrance. Everything is nicely sloped and accessible. We also have the left-hand side, which is a semi-detached, but I believe this is no longer available to build, pushing the garages into the basement and creating downslope basically from the street. Again, it's something that has been built in the neighborhood, but it's not something that we envision. We can go to the next slide. Again, more examples of semi-detached builds, front-facing garages, balconies to the front, lots of light, 3 stories high. We can go to the next slide. Again, more examples. So I just want to point out that this kind of similar design with 3-story facade, front-facing garages, balconies to the front, flat roofs or no flat roofs, now depending on the year that was built, but architectural style mostly in a modern design style. We can go to the next one. So basically this brings us to our project. And now since we did look at the comparables, we can see how similar the project is. Again, front-facing garages, front balconies, lots of lights, semi-detached build, flat roof that we want to use for solar solar power. What we also have here is the existing tree that we're trying to protect, that we really worked hard with the city and the tree protection department. We have the low slope, which makes it drivable, safe in the wintertime, also universally accessible, meaning wheelchair accessible. We also corrected the front steps, not to be steps, but to be a slope, trying to do the most possible to have that inclusive design and to offer more and more work from home possibilities for everyone. That being said, let me just take a list of my notes. What else did I want to do? So what else I want to include in that landscaping, city bylaws. Again, we worked really hard to respect all the bylaws with the city staff, whether it is setbacks, tree protection, front landscaping areas and whatnot. We can go to the next slide. Next slide should be our landscaping area. And as you can see, what we're trying to do with the tree, we basically kept the retaining walls that we found on the side and at the front of the property. We are working with the maximum driveways set at 2.75 meters. So we are respecting that. Basically, that offers us the style or the driveway on the left-hand side as it is, basically because we have to respect the setbacks, pushing our garage to the inwards of the center of the property, making a little bit of a curved driveway, but then again, we are keeping the tree protection and retaining the existing retaining walls. So it gives us a little bit of a shape on the left-hand side, but on the right-hand side or top of the property, we have a just straight front driveway. Again, we did work really hard with the city staff and the tree department just to keep the protection, to have this this existing tree be untouched during the construction and to have the most chances to survive the demolition and the build of the property. In terms of the landscaping, what else do I want to say is there will be an automatic sprinkler system installed because the city and the neighbors had some issues with water retention and whatnot. So I did talk with the client and we will install a sprinkler system to provide additional water if we see that the tree is not going to make it. So one of those concerns has been answered. Backyard is still at the same level, not impacting any of the back neighbors or the side neighbors. We will provide fencing to secure and to offer privacy to, again, back neighbors and the side neighbors. To talk more about the property, I would invite you for next couple of slides. Next slide would be more of the design, but we can skip that one and the next one. Next one, again, here we can just stop just to show that the backyard will be kept the same as side and the back of the property. So no deviation from the landscaping. And now I would also like to talk about the streetscape. And I know that we are asking for minor variances for the front garages, which we deviate from the prescribed plan, but I would just like to show the extent of the streetscape and what we had to work with. We would just like to have the equal opportunity to do whatever's been done in the neighborhood, and the streetscape and the analysis of the streetscape didn't allow us that. So we can see the park, we can see aged buildings, old buildings built 50 years ago. Again, it's not representative of the community, but it has been built. So I believe we're a little bit penalized in terms of the streetscape analysis. We can go to the next slide. Again, on the next slide, we'll see that we are surrounding mostly with older buildings. The newer building just next to us, front-facing garages, traditional build. Older buildings, again, next to us on this street, they don't have the front-facing garages. But as we can see from the examples pulled in the neighborhood, there's a sufficient amount of front-facing garages. So I don't think that that was one of the biggest oppositions. And I believe that minor variance is in fact minor. I believe we have another slide. If not, yes, another slide showing more houses on the street next to us. Ours is completely to the left-hand side. We do have the neighbor next to us that has the garage in the back of the property, and that was something discussed with the neighbors. Everybody in the neighborhood is strongly against backyard garages and that mushroom design, how we call it. Here on the image, what I want to show is, again, older houses, not representative of what's been built in the last 10 years. I also want to point the fact that the neighbor here at the bottom of the image does have a flat driveway, 2 streets down from us, again, providing more of a secure entrance to the property and being universally accessible. Now, the fact that he has stairs, that's another issue, but again, it's more approachable, easier to deal with in the winter times. Talk about more about the streetscape. We also would like to point that we did work hard with the neighborhood. We do have 18 supporting letters, I believe they were sent to you. None of the neighbors really had any opposition with the semi-detached build, with the front-facing garages. We did have some concerns about the property, the retaining walls, the fences, the flat roof and whatnot. I believe all of those points have been answered to the neighbors. Again, anything more to add? Let me just look at my notes, but I believe we really worked hard with everybody surrounding city staff, planning department, tree protection to have a successful project. Again, nobody was really opposed to the design itself, more some concerns about, design aspects of the build. But again, I believe we have a successful project here that represents the community, helps the city in terms of this diversification and intensification. I don't know if there's anything more to add to that, but I believe that's it. And in the result of our meetings with the consultants, yes, so basically all the concerns have been answered. And that would be at the end of my presentation. If you have any questions, I'm available.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Gavran. Mr. Hamilton, are you there?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So in consultations with the forestry department, you guys, everybody's happy that that tree is going to survive. And Ms. Young, if you'd like to chime in as well.
Yes, thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. I believe this design will accommodate the tree. It's a small enough tree that I think it can withstand some of this work around it. I did have one further question that I don't know has been addressed yet, but can be addressed by the time of the building permit. And that was just to make sure that there is adequate drainage into and out of the retaining wall area to make sure that there is access to water for that tree. So I think the design has been expanded, and it should allow for that tree to survive.
All right, thank you, Ms. Young. And Mr. Hamilton, you still have concerns with the front-facing garages, but you're not objecting.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we do have concerns about the deviation from the streetscape character analysis of the immediately surrounding properties that do not contain garages.
But you're not objecting.
Not at the, no, we are not.
Because I've got on my cheat sheet under no concerns. All right. All right, okay. Any questions from the panel? Ms. McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to point out it would be helpful when you're providing photographs, especially those initial ones of newly built houses in the area, to have addresses associated with that. It gives us more of an idea where they are in relationship to the subject property. Now, having said that, have you got any contextual plans to show how this is going to fit in with the abutting? Just a streetscape plan that imposes the new structure?
I don't, but we can see from the renders, I'm more showing the site and how that will impact the site of the next door properties. I don't have an image of the render of the street, but if we can go back to one of the images presented, You can see here on the left-hand side would be the building of the neighbors. And we can see the slopes. In further images, I believe at the end of the presentation, we can see from the other side how that would look like exactly over here. And we
But
can
that's not helpful in that it's just a block beside it on the left hand. Like there's no slope roof. I have no idea how the house beside it is, the new proposal is going to fit in. So just, you know, something like that is not necessarily helpful. Can you tell me the height of that retaining or that box for the tree, what the height of that is?
The box of the tree would be the same as it is currently. So we wouldn't be touching the front of the retaining tree wall or the side that's on the left-hand side. So it would be existing. So whatever we have at the moment, and we can see that at the beginning of the slides.
But would I see, if I'm driving down the street, would I see the front door because of the height of that new retaining box?
Again, you would see the height because it's not going that high, so it's not going up to 8 feet. It's more about 4 feet retaining wall. We can go to the first slide or the beginning of the presentation. Exactly. So we would be keeping the same height of the retaining wall. We would be keeping the retaining wall as much as possible. Of course, we do have the other driveway that we have to cut in. But this would be the height, and I don't know if you can imagine, sorry again. But yes, we will be seeing a little bit of the front door. I don't know if that answers your question.
I think so. And the other thing is, normally when we have a variance for lot areas or lot widths, we would have a table. Do you have any idea of what the lot sizes are on the street?
Lot sizes, I believe they're all very similar to ours, if not identical.
Yeah, you see, that's not helpful. I think it's more helpful if we have a table that spells out, you know, this address has a lot size of this, so that we have an idea of how yours is going to match or correspond with existing lot widths and areas in the neighborhood. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Wilder, any questions or comments? No, okay. We have a number of neighbors who are on the speakers list for today, and I'll begin with Ms. Lasso from the Westboro Community Association, if she's there.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Your address for
Yes,
the record,
thank you,
please.
Mr. Chair.
Your address
Yes,
for the
Patricia
record.
Lasso.
Yeah.
Yep, 266 Ferndale Avenue.
Okay.
So I'm representing the Westboro Beach Community Association. And I do want to commend Zoran and his team for the consultations they have done. It has been intense. There has been a lot of it. However, the Community Association cannot endorse this due to the very serious concerns of the immediate neighbors on either side and behind. Our primary concern is the grading and the fact that they will be at street level and they're going to have tremendously high retaining walls and fences. And the neighbors just aren't happy and are concerned about safety and how this is going to look in the neighborhood. And other neighbors are on the call. Perhaps they can let us know what their views are, but we will not be endorsing this.
You understand that we really don't have anything to do with the drainage and grading, and that's
I understand.
That's between the building code services people and the applicant.
I understand.
All right. Okay, and so as far as you're concerned, there's going to be exceedingly high fences. Exactly where on that property?
On either side of the property, the retaining walls. You can see it from the diagrams they've presented.
And there's going to be fences, privacy fences installed as well?
That's what I see.
Okay.
The design has changed a couple of times, and that might be leading to some confusion. I also note that he talked about the slope of the driveway has been changed, and we'd like to know what exactly that new slope is now.
Mr. Gavran?
Sorry to interrupt. I would just like to say that the privacy fences have been added. That was to the request of the neighbors on the side, again, for the protection for privacy as well. They're not extremely high. We would be respecting normal height of 6 feet of fence. So nothing's exaggerated in terms of the retaining walls. They're at max where the front door is at about 3-4 feet. So I don't see anything exaggerated in terms of height, meaning 8, 9, 10 feet, nothing like that. We can see, again, from the slides, what we presented, the height would be at 4 feet. And the privacy fencing, I mean, it's privacy fencing around the neighbors. Everybody has it installed. So it would stay at 6 feet, nothing exaggerated.
And that privacy fencing comes as far forward as the front wall of the proposed builds?
Yes, sir.
And so it just goes to, basically goes to the back along the perimeter of the lot.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you can go to 2.1 meters in this town without a variance.
For the privacy fence? Wow.
Yep.
More
7
than
feet. 7 feet. Yep. Okay. All right. Ms. Lasalle, anything else?
Not for me. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. All right. I also have a Maureen Dugan, 290 Churchill Avenue. Can you hear me, Ms. Dugan? Is your volume muted, Ms. Dugan? Because I can't hear you and I can't see you. Can't hear you. Can't hear you. Still can't hear you. Nope. There's a mute button in the lower left-hand corner of the screen. You have to uncheck it.
Thank you. All right, we have done that. So,
Okay.
all right, so my partner Helmut Beffert will speak on our behalf.
Okay. And you're the next door neighbor?
We're at 29, my name is Helmut Beffert,
Yes.
and I'm at 290 Churchill Avenue North.
All right.
So regarding the fencing, there is going to be a wall there. Then we understand that's a result of this the grade change that's going to be happening on the property. And my understanding is, since this wall is approaching 4 feet in height, that there needs to be some sort of a fencing on top of it, and that fencing will extend beyond the front of the building, some ways towards the street from the front of the building, because you can't, and my understanding is you can't have a 4-foot drop and not have some sort of protection to keep somebody from falling down into it. So that's one of our concerns that's being created with this artificial change in elevation that's not there currently.
Okay. Please proceed. Anything further?
That's our primary concern. We also have some concerns that, we've been discussing, which I'm not a technical expert in these areas, but in terms of drainage, creating sort of a hole to all sides around it just seems to me to invite problems that might not necessarily exist otherwise.
Well, that's going to be dealt with by other people at the city.
That's right.
And it comes down to the building permit process, and they have pretty stringent rules and regulations in place. So that should allay some of your fears, because as Mr. Gavran well knows, without that approval, his project doesn't go forward.
Those are my main comments that I'd like to make at this point. Thank you.
Gavran, you've heard about the privacy fencing in front of the building.
Yes, yes, sir. And if we can go to slide 11, if we still have a chance to show that.
But that's why.
Slide 11 from my presentation. Yes, the gentleman is correct that there will be a smaller fence just blocking the 4 feet drop to, again, to alleviate some concerns from the safety perspective. And you can see that, so not at the beginning, mostly towards the end where we progress from 3 feet to 4 feet. Yes, there will be, again, a 3-foot fence just for the protection of the kids so nobody can fall. Again, we will work strongly with the 2 neighbors in the style of the fence if there's a preference to that.
And this is a building code requirement?
Yes, this is a building code requirement. Everything on top of 3 feet would need to have some kind of a railing to protect.
Okay. All right.
But again, nothing major, nothing excessive, is just to give the privacy and to have the safety of everybody, right? But whenever we're coming down, that fence should be negligible and it not will be visible. So again, it should assimilate with the existing fence, I believe, in terms of architecture. But then again, something could be discussed with the neighbors. Again, I believe the gentleman over here is not the next door neighbor, more on the left-hand side of the property, which he wouldn't be really affected, but yes.
Thank you. We have your next door neighbor on the speakers list, Mr. Is it Tran Trong?
Yes.
Is he there?
Yes, hi, Mr. Chair.
Oh, miss. All right, and your address is 288?
That's correct.
And you're going to be right beside. So please proceed.
Yeah, so I have shared similar concerns with my neighbor, Helmet and Marine. So there is safety concern regarding the fencing as well as the water drainage issue that may lay within the retaining wall. That will be like right next to my property.
Yeah, well, as I said earlier in this deliberation, the drainage and grading issue is not before this panel, and it will be before people at the city, and they'll have to be satisfied before they issue a building permit. So that'll be dealt with. That'll be dealt with at that time. And as far as the fencing is concerned, you've also heard from Mr. Gavran that this is a building code requirement for a retaining wall. It's 4 feet. They have to have there has to be some sort of protection to stop people from falling that distance and being injured. And you also heard him say that particular piece of fence would be in the range of less than a meter high.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question. Are we allowed to attend this meeting with the city?
Allowed to attend which meeting with the city?
That discuss those building codes and permits?
As far as drainage and grading is concerned?
Correct.
Well, I'd suggest that you talk to the proponent and find out when they're going to be filing their application with the city, and ask them for a copy of the drainage and grading plan that they're going to be providing to the city and the contact person they're going to be dealing with at the city, and then you can take it from there.
Sorry, I might have misheard what you said. Who should I reach out to?
You should talk to the proponent and have them give you a copy of the drainage and grading plan that they're going to be submitting to the city, and the name of the contact person that they're going to be talking to. And if you wish, you can directly contact the city employee.
Okay, noted. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. And we also have Darren Curry, 283 Royal Avenue. This is a neighbor directly behind. Is Mr. Curry there?
Hello, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Curry?
Hello, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Curry, please proceed.
Yes, I don't believe I have anything additional to add to the comments that were raised so far. I think you heard the neighbors directly adjacent questioning the need for fences because the design of this home involves digging down to grade and putting up effectively the garage in the basement, which is not in keeping with any of the other properties on this block. Many of the photos that were shown of comparable homes in the neighborhood, I recognize many of them. I believe many of those homes are in a different part of the neighborhood, which has a different zoning. So they're actually zoned to be 3-story buildings. This particular property is zoned as a 2-story to allow a 2-story dwelling. And the reason it presents as a 3-story dwelling is because of this excavation down to the basement level. So in speaking with the neighbors up to now, I guess that's been the main concern with this whole approach is why does this particular property need to be excavated down to effectively present itself as a 3-story building and where everything else along that entire block and the zoning allows for a 2-story building.
Okay, all right. Anything further, Mr. Curry?
Just a question. I know there was the last meeting, there was a lot of attention paid to saving the tree in the front yard, which is a laudable intention. And I see they've made an attempt to take care of that with the latest design. If something were to happen to the tree, we've heard a lot of talk about, we'll do our best to make sure it's protected and so on. What is the consequence or what happens in case the tree is impacted in some way during this construction?
Ms. Young, I'll ask the city forester.
Thank you for the question through you, Mr. Chair. If anything happens to the tree during construction, then full compensation for the value of the tree would be owed to the city and as well as replacement of it. Okay. I don't have the value offhand right now, but that's something we would look at if something happens, but we will work hard to make sure that it doesn't happen.
Thank you very much.
Anything further, Mr. Curry?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and you're going to have that privacy fence along your back property line. You're okay with that?
Well, I had raised this as a question last week, although it's my understanding is that the fence bylaw is the fence bylaw, but the current fence that surrounds the property is straddling the property line and roughly 2/3 of it project into our property, which is behind 284 Churchill. We're at 283 Royal. So if there were to be a new fence constructed, I would just respectfully request that it follow the property line and not where the existing fence is, as it's completely old and crooked.
Actually, if I remember correctly, there has to be an offset beside that fence and the property line.
You mean it needs to be offset from the property line to be within the
Yep,
property?
You can't build it on the property line. You have to be
Sure.
There has to be an offset.
Understood. The current fence is diagonal effectively and protrudes about 2/3 of it onto the Royal side of the property. So that we just look for that to be corrected.
And you know where your property pins are?
Yes, I sent a photo to the COA last week.
Okay, so you know where the fence needs to go.
That is correct.
Mm-hmm. So you can have a little chat with Mr. Gavran before they decide to put their fence in.
Sure. Yeah.
And that'll solve that.
Indeed.
Right. Thank you very much. Mr. Gavran, final word.
Yes, if I just may add to the information and just to have accurate information for everybody, the site that I outlined is in fact all one zone, R3E zone. So all the subject properties that I did put as comparables are all in the same zoning area, and they're all in the neighborhood that I outlined. So we can, Craig is over here with us. He can definitely verify that information. I'm
Okay.
looking at it right now, and they're all in the same zoning. Again, I believe everybody's just taking advantage of the slope, and that's why they have the appearance of three stories facades. Again, by the code, we are still at 2 stories. We are respecting the maximum heights, except that our stories are smaller to allow us to build up to look like 3 stories. But again, same zoning for the whole neighborhood, same design principle as the neighborhood.
Yes,
I believe the zoning is different across the street.
Across the street on the park area, but the majority of the outlined area, as in my presentation, is the R3E zone. Of course, the park itself is another zone, and more towards the Ottawa downtown core, you have another zone. But just behind us on Royal Avenue, or the street next to us, Atlantis, and the next one behind that, same zoning.
Correct. My point was simply some of the properties you showed as comparables are in a different zone.
The comparables
For example, the other side of Churchill towards the river, that was one of the properties you showed. It's a 3-story property in a 3-story zoned area. That's all.
You are right for the one on Beach Grove Avenue. Yes, that's the one that was more on the right-hand side, but everything left, and 99% of my comparables are on the left-hand side, mostly on Royal Avenue, same zoning.
Well, we're not dealing with a variance in height.
Yes.
You're meeting the height restriction of the zone.
I was just talking about the comparables again, because I don't want to present a project that deviates from the neighborhood and the neighborhood design. And that's why I did take those comparables.
Yeah. I used to live in that neighborhood a long time ago. Anyway, all right. Any further questions from the members of the panel? You wish to reserve on this? All right. We're going to reserve on this application, and you will receive our decision in 10 days. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Okay. The next application before us are items 13 and 14 from the agenda. 576 Brunel Street. And these were adjourned from May 4th and May the 18th. And is the agent there?
Yes, I am Eric LeBarish with a business address of 2008 Gatineau View Crescent.
Mr. LeBarish. So we have here, we adjourned this the last time because of
Transportation engineering services.
Yeah, transportation engineering services raised some questions. Now, I believe Mr. Hamilton is the planner for the file. So transportation and engineering services is now okay with this application. Their concerns have been dealt with.
Yes, Mr. Chair, their initial comment was that the driveways were not in compliance with the private approach bylaw. There is an exception in that bylaw that does apply to this property, and they have no concerns.
Okay, so those concerns have been addressed.
Yes.
All right. Okay, Mr. LeBarish, if you'd like to proceed with your application.
Do we have to administer the oath of the signs?
Oh yeah, thanks for reminding me.
That's no problem.
I need to write this on my forehead. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
Yes, I do. I affirm.
Okay. Okay, please proceed.
Thank you. Through you, I'd kindly ask the coordinator to bring up the presentation, please. Sorry, is it up? Okay, sorry. Thank you. So today I'll be presenting for the proposed development at 576 Brunel. Next slide, please.
Looks like we have some issues with your file.
It was a PDF document, so I'm not sure what's going on. Does the committee have access to the presentation outside of screen sharing, or?
We have it on file, and normally they pop right up.
Sorry about that. We're going to bring it up now, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, it just froze for a minute there.
It's that time of the day.
Yeah, well. Yep.
So next slide, please. Thank you. So 576, Brunel has a legal description of part of Lot 9, Regulation Plan 43. The current official plan designation is the general urban area, and the new official plan designation is the interurban transect evolving neighborhood, and the zoning is R2D. Now, the proposal is to demolish the current home, which is a 2-bedroom, no basement bungalow, and build 2 traditional semi-detached homes requiring minor variances for lot area and maximum building height. Now, current zoning requires a minimum lot area of 270 meters squared and a maximum building height of 8.5 meters. For part 1 and part 2, which face Brunel Street, the plans provide for a lot area of 177.3 meters squared and a building height of 9.03 meters. And for parts 3 and part 4, Codds Road, we'll be providing for a lot area of 177.3 meters squared and a building height of 9.19 meters. Now, the minimum variance for height is being requested to make a more livable basement with the hopes of attracting larger families into the area, which is walking distance to transit, community centers, various amenities, including a movie theater and restaurants, and it has relatively close proximity to the Ottawa River walking and biking paths. Now, the minor variances for lot size are being requested to build 2 traditional semis. It should be noted that current zoning allows for 2 long semis to be developed that would just require a severance. But in talking with city planners and given the organization's goal to maximize green space, we thought the traditional semi-detached would better fit the characteristics of the surrounding neighborhood. And it would also reduce the amount of asphalt required on the property, which again maximizes the tree compensation planting plan, allows for more green elements, etc. Next slide, please. So here we just have a quick view of the existing lots on the left and an older rendering of the property, which show desirable architectural designs, large windows for natural light, green elements, boxwood hedges, shrubbery, and also tree planting. But I'll discuss that more in the landscape plan, as that was originally a concern of forestry. Next slide, please. So I'll briefly discuss the 4 tests and comments. I won't go into too much detail into the 4 tests, given we're under the opinion that it meets the 4 tests as per the Planning Act, and also given planning staff support that they have no concerns with the requested severance, as long as all the other zoning bylaws are respected. So to quickly speak to the 4 tests, for the first one being minor, it's going to be a minor impact to the existing community, given the existing blend of developments in the area. Currently, there are single detached, semi-detached, duplexes, and actual low-rise multi-residential units on the street. In terms of being desirable, we'll be creating high-quality architectural elements, colors, and adding a ton of greenery that will enhance the existing area while providing the opportunity for multiple families to move into the area to further support diverse community representation. In terms of general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, it's in line with the existing bylaw. As per Part 5, Section 144, keeping a 25% rear yard setback was imperative during the design process to maximize the space for greenery and tree planting. And also the front and side yard setbacks are also being respected, as well as the frontage. So it's just the couple minor variances being requested. And finally, for general intent and purpose of the official plan, it meets numerous intents and purposes of the official plan. In the interest of time, I won't go in detail, but if required, I'd be more than happy to. And finally, just to speak to the community comments, on April 28th, before the original May 4th hearing, I went door to door to every single house on Brunel. Literally 99% of all of the properties that answered the door were tenanted properties. So as they are tenants, they had no comments or no objections. And actually the only two homeowner occupied properties that answered the door were both actually in support. So one being 580 Brunel, which is actually the semi-detached dwelling that is directly beside 576 Brunel, which would be most impacted by the property, and across the street at 575 Brunel. And that individual actually sent in a letter of support. And on top of that, as part of our tree compensation plan, we actually went to the two homeowner occupied properties. We offered to plant trees as part of our compensation plan on their properties. 580 Brunel didn't really have any space for additional trees. However, 575 Brunel, we offered to plant a tree in their backyard and the front yard. He had plans for the backyard, but he actually accepted our proposal to plant a tree in the front yard, which I'll discuss more later in the presentation. Next slide, please. So here we just have a City of Ottawa zoning map, and I just wanted to point out the properties that make use of Cods Road access. So the highlighted yellow property is 576 Brunel. The southernmost property that's denoted by the X, it actually has a coach home or a secondary dwelling on the property with a driveway attached to the property that makes use of Cods Road access. Just north of the proposed property, in that middle X, we can actually see that that property had severed their lot vertically, creating two distinct properties, with one having a Cods Road address and the other keeping its Brunel address. So that would be similar to the severance being requested for our proposed property. And then finally, in the northernmost section there, we see two X's. That's 548 Brunel and 550 Brunel. And that's a semi-detached dwelling with separate basement rental units. And they actually have detached garages that sit on Cods side and have driveway access from Cods Road for those individuals. And finally, just to speak to the new frontages that will be created, we can see that in the neighborhood, there are a ton of properties that have similar frontages to what the proposed development would be post severance. Next slide, please. I'll skip over the site plan. Next slide, please. I'll also skip over the proposed elevations. Thank you. Given the minor variance being requested for height, I did want to provide the committee with a streetscape view. So as we can see, given the properties that sit directly adjacent to 576 Brunel, the property would be minor. The variance being required for height would be minor in nature. They're quite in line with the existing height of the properties beside. And secondly, I'd like to point out that if we look at parts 1 and part 2, for example, at 570 Brunel, which is the house on the right, given the difference in grading, had it been built up to the 8.5 meter max, in absolute terms, it would actually sit level, if not a little bit higher than the proposed development. And if we look at parts 3 and part 4, it's a similar story here. In absolute height terms, the height is very similar today. And if they had built up to the max 8.5 meters, they would actually probably sit a little bit higher in terms of absolute terms. So from a height perspective, it's minor and non-encompassing on the neighborhood. Next slide, please. So I did want to touch on the landscape plan because the original May 4 adjournment had to do with forestry having concerns because we hadn't properly articulated our landscaping plans. For some background, there's currently 6 distinctive trees on the property, with 5 being in okay shape and 1 being healthy, which is tree number 2. On May 6th, we actually had forestry come on site to look at potential opportunities and risks. Unfortunately, given the new grade requirement and the location of foundations, we will have to take the 6 distinctive trees, which calls for 11 compensation trees as per bylaw. Now, again, given the consultation with forestry, the max kind of amount of trees that we can do, given the lot sizes and the foundation locations and competing root systems, is 8 trees, so 2 per property. So if we look at part 1 and part 2, for example, either house will get either a flowering cherry or Japanese tree lilac out front, and they will get a northern hackberry and a sugar maple out back. Now, obviously, the flowering cherry and Japanese tree lilac are smaller tree species. We did contemplate larger trees, but again, there's hydro lines that actually run parallel to the sidewalks on Cods Road and Brunel Street, so we had to go with a smaller tree. And we did contemplate larger trees, large tree species in the backyards. But again, given the competing root systems, we had to bring it down to a medium tree species, and we want a lot of natural light for the future inhabitants. Now, not necessarily on our property, there was some concern by forestry as well. If you look at the top right section, there are 3 maples that sit on 570 Brunel. And there was concern from forestry that a retaining wall might impact the root systems, and we may have to do something with those trees. But we actually had our arborist come back on site a second time and confirm that the retaining wall will have no impact on the neighbor's maples, and we will in fact be protecting them. Now, additionally to the tree planting, we can see that we'll be incorporating nice boxwood hedges, shrubberies, and flowering boxes to create a nice green natural environment to support the new space. Next slide, please.
Can we hold on for a second and not go any further?
Yeah.
Looking at this partial site plan, I have a question. Why are the rear yards so shallow?
I mean, the rear yard setbacks are in line with zoning. It maintains a 25% rear yard setback.
I thought there was a larger minimum in the R2D zone. Mr. Hamilton?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do believe they are compliant. I think it is based off of the lot depth, because this is half the depth of the lots beside it. The rear yard requirement is reduced.
That puts 2 semis 8.8 meters apart.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. So that's a legal rear yard then.
Yes.
That has nothing to do with section 135 and through lots and residential zones.
The severance would consider them to be interior lots in this situation.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Hamilton.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Please concern Mr. Laverge.
Thank you. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so here we just have essentially, we have parts 3 and part 4, which open up to Cods Road, which is essentially just the reciprocal version of parts 1 and part 2. So again, 2 smaller tree species given the hydro lines out front, the flowering cherry and the Japanese tree lilac, and then a northern hackberry and a sugar maple. One thing I'd like to point out is that all of the different tree species will be offset. So from your reference point, whether it's from the road or from the interior of the lot, there'll be no 2 tree species directly beside each other. So from a visual perspective, you will get a nice diversification of different green elements for when you're looking at the property. And again, the property makes use of additional boxwood hedges, shrubberies, and flowering boxes just to enhance the overall green appeal. And finally, again, just on that right side, again, on 570 Brunel, it's not on our property line, but just mentioning that we will be protecting those maples and we will be able to keep that cedar hedge. So we'll actually be able to maintain a nice green privacy wall and natural environment as well. Next slide, please. And then finally, we just have a lot plan for 575 Brunel. This is just to show, and the individual wrote in an email confirming he was good with this plan. But this is just to show that one of the trees in our tree compensation plan, bringing the total compensation trees to 9, will be planted outside of 575 Brunel, which will enhance the greenery of the existing neighborhood. And because he doesn't deal with the same hydro lines that run parallel to the sidewalk just outside his house, we'll actually be able to plant a large tree species. So we'll be planting a bur oak there. So out of the 11 compensation trees required, we're planting 9, and more than happy to provide compensation for the missing 2. Actually, a portion of each home sale will go to tree planting initiatives. We are a sustainable developer, so there are strategies like that. So happy to understand that our compensation will go to tree planting elsewhere in Ottawa, given the fact we can't hit the 11 compensation tree target. Next slide, please. And then with that, that concludes my presentation, and I'll open the floor to questions.
Is there any intention to put secondary dwelling units in any of these dwellings?
There is not, no.
Okay. And I heard that your the rationale for the height increase was to attract families to the area with a more livable basement.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So the backside of the lower level will actually be walkout. So it will be able to support larger families. And again, we're trying to support a diverse community representation. In the street, there's single detached, semi-detached, and multi-residential units. So it will give the opportunity for more families to move in and support that diversification.
Is there going to be a full basement under these dwellings?
Well, that bottom floor is on one side, just given the grading, it'll be walkout on the backside.
So the ground floor
on the front side, it will be partly like half above grade, I believe, and half under grade, and then on the backside, it'll be.
All right. Okay. All right. Ms. McLean, you have questions or comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You already asked one of the questions I had about the more livable basement. So I'll just, given the nature of the variances, which predominantly are for lot area, can you give us, do you have any information on the lot areas in the neighborhood and how these would relate to those?
Not handy. Not handy, although I can say that, the severances are in line with different severances that have been done in terms of creating the minimum lot frontage and depths. Just, it's kind of a mix and match of different severances that have occurred. It would be a little bit on the smaller side, but again, because of all the green elements and the privacy that we're including on these properties, it will be adequately it won't seem like a small lot or anything like that. They'll have more privacy than some of the other dwellings. For example, the multi-residential units that have 60% of the lot just pavement, you'll have more privacy, and it will seem like a much larger living space than other lots on the area or in the street. Sorry.
So it really would be helpful to have an idea how these lot sizes fit in with the lot sizes in the neighborhood. You mentioned a severance at 564 Brunel and 571 Cod. Do you have any information on what type of housing is on those 2 lots?
That would be, well, in the southernmost, I believe you're referencing the 586 on the southernmost lot. One is just a coach home, an additional coach home on the lot. And the one that was, if we go back to that zoning map, the property that I had shown in the middle there with the X, that created 2 distinct properties. Yeah. So in the southernmost section there, that's just a secondary dwelling home on the lot in the southernmost X, and then in that middle X, it is just it created 2 distinct properties, and I believe the property might be on the Brunel side in that middle X may actually be a duplex with a different, like a separate rented basement. And then the 2 X's at the top there, that is a semi-detached with basement dwelling units. So there's 4 units total as well. So that would be very similar in terms of intensification to what we're requesting as well. Just we're doing it in a little bit of a different manner.
Except that we don't have the lot areas of those, but the one to the north with the single X that has a similar severance through the lot.
Yeah.
Do you know what the type of dwelling is on each of those? Are they singles?
So the one facing Cod is for sure, it is a single detached. I believe the one on the Brunel side is a single detached with a basement unit. The majority of the street is all rented, and a lot of the homes in the area make use of separate rented basements.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from members of the panel? Mr. Wilder? No. And someone's raised their hand. Ma'am? Please go ahead. Can't hear
you. You're still on mute.
You're on mute.
Doesn't say you're on mute, but.
Bottom left corner.
That's my business partner and mother-in-law. So.
Well, there's a mute button at the lower left corner of the Zoom screen that needs to be clicked.
It's strange because their mute icon isn't up, but.
Yeah, well.
Oh.
Mr. Chair, if she's having a hard time unmuting, we do suggest calling in through the phone number that's shown on screen right now, if she did want to raise any comments.
Yep. Well, you can see on the screen the phone number, so you can call in, and we'll have an audio feed.
She's messaged me. It's not working, but I told her to call in if she still has concerns or comments. But it's fine if we proceed it.
And Mr. Chair, I just wonder, in the meantime, could we ask planning staff why there's no cash in lieu of parkland condition on this severance?
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. Apologies, there should be a cash in lieu condition applied to this severance.
And I'd just like to comment as well, in regard to the conditions, I'm fine with that being added in, and I'm fine with all of the other existing conditions that were stipulated in the planning staff comments that was provided.
Just to reiterate, existing dwelling removed and existing services capped, independent services identified, grading and drainage plan, accessory structure demolished or relocated, joint use and maintenance study or joint use and maintenance agreements, a noise attenuation study or noise and vibration study if applicable, and then we've added cash in lieu of parkland.
Yep, I am fine with all those conditions.
Okay. We still don't have any contact with your mother-in-law, so we need to proceed with this application. So
yeah, that's fine.
You've given us a very comprehensive set of information. So okay. I'd like to reserve on this application, members of the panel. So we thank you for your input, and you'll be hearing from us with a notice of decision within 10 days.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. Mr. Chair.
Yep.
Bye.
Last application we'll be dealing with today, item 15 on the agenda, 41E and 41F Sterling Avenue. And this is an application adjourned from April 6th, May 4th, and May 18th this year. And the agent for this application is Chris Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Clark, before we begin, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the notice provided to you as part of the application process and by the committee was posted at the property to which the application applies for the prescribed number of days before the hearing and clearly visible and legible during the entirety of that time?
I do.
All right. So what we have before us is the final version.
Are you looking at the architectural plans?
Yeah.
Yes, that's the final proposed changes with the 3 stories, yes.
And there's some confusion regarding variance C, I believe. And we understood last time we spoke that the height variance was not a requirement, and it seems to be still in the relief required column. Is that the case?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we reduced the height to 3 stories, so height variance should no longer be required.
It should no longer be required, Mr. Clark, or it is no longer required?
It is no longer required.
So we are going to delete variance C. That's what you're telling me, because you're meeting the requirements of the bylaw?
Yes.
Okay.
And through you, Mr. Chair, there's also a second variance that needs to be eliminated.
Which is?
The variance G for 41E Sterling Avenue to permit a reduced habitable first floor of 15.79 square meters.
Okay.
The previous covered parking space was enclosed. So the 41E now complies with the minimum first floor area. Okay. 41F is still deficient though.
Okay. So we're deleting C and G. Okay. So A, B, D, E, F, H, I, and J, K, L, and M are still applicable.
Correct.
Okay. All right. If you'd like to make your presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you mentioned, we've been to the committee several times. The height, which was previously at 4 stories and required a variance, could not be supported by staff. Staff indicated that they would like us to reduce to 3 stories. We did that. We also enclosed the garage space per the request of the community association. They were concerned with, having a covered space there or having it called driveway. So we felt that closing that in would also eliminate one of those other variances. So those were the changes made in terms of setbacks to lot lines, the proposed rear yard depth and all those other things. None of that has changed. It was just the height and the ground floor of 41E. The revised plans were sent to the community association for review. They did have some comments, again, which we responded to. I think Mr. Hamilton was copied on those. And we sent the revised plans to the Committee of Adjustment, and that brings us to where we are today.
Well, you can walk us through your variance requests, please, one by one.
So the first variance to reduce the lot area from 100 or from 300 square meters to 171.4 square meters. That is the current size of the parcel of both 41E and 41F. So that's the variance to reduce the lot area. For the lot width, the current lot width is 5.77 meters. The minimum in the bylaw is 10 meters. So the request is to reduce and recognize the lot width. Now the lot area and lot width were both permitted by consent in 2011. Nothing's changed with those in that regard. So it's the same lots that were created back then. In terms of variance D, to permit vertically attached dwellings to have a common party wall of 2.89 instead of 5 meters. That has to do with just the separation between the two long semi-detached dwellings, and the way the building is designed. You can't meet that 5 meter common party wall requirement. So that's the reason for that variance.
Okay.
Variance E, to reduce the southerly side yard from 1.2 to 0.6 meters. That's just to facilitate development of the lot. That's similar to the variances that were permitted for 41AB and 41CD. Both had, similar reductions to the side yards. We went through with staff and looked at the servicing requirements and ensured that setback would be enough to access the servicing trench and have all of the servicing work between the two buildings. Okay. Variance F, to permit a reduced front yard setback. Now that we're just matching the existing setback of the two buildings that were built. I believe this is a provision that has changed in recent years. So we're deficient by 0.04 meters. We're asking for the variance just to match the existing setback of what's there. And the thought being, even if we had shifted a little bit, we would have started changing other variances to the rear yard. So we decided to just keep it. When a future developer develops, they can look at making up that deficiency and meeting the requirement. Variance G, we eliminated that for the habitable floor. So that brings us to 41F Sterling Avenue. So variance H, to permit a reduced flag lot of 1.2 meters where the bylaw requires 2.2. The 1.2 meters was what the flag lot was severed at in 2011. That was the bylaw requirement at the time. So we're just asking to recognize, what was created back then. Variance I, to permit a reduced rear yard setback of 3.63 meters. That's similar to the setback that reduction that we requested to the rear yard of the abutting properties, in order to sort of meet or make up some of the amenity area that might be lost. There is sort of an area that's labeled garden area on the plans in between the two ground floor units. Now, I don't think that's necessarily going to be a garden, but it's anticipated to be an amenity space for both the units to be shared to sort of make up the difference that's being lost in the rear yard. And there are also some patio areas on the building, similar to the other two that were built on the abutting lots, that will provide some additional amenity space on the upper floors. And I say patios, I mean sort of like small decks or balconies on the building. Okay. Variance J, permit a reduced rear yard area of 20.65 meters. So that again is to match the setbacks that were approved on the lots abutting, and we're just, this was the third in a set of 3 long semi-detached buildings, so we kept the same variances as what were proposed back in 2011 and approved. The side yard setback 0.7 and 0.6 meters. I believe one of those does comply. The other one, again, similar to what we proposed before, and that's just to allow, development of a building that is somewhat usable, since the lot frontage is only 5.77 meters. Again, to permit a common party wall similar to the previous 41E variance, that would be variance D. So that's the same rationale there. And then the habitable first floor, it's slightly undersized. The zoning bylaw considers the first floor per dwelling unit, not for the whole building. So in terms of the whole building, it would be well over 40 square meters, but for each unit, unit F is slightly undersized at 30.94 square meters. So overall, I mean, the list of variances does seem lengthy. They are very similar to or exactly the same as what were proposed and approved back in 2011. I realize the zoning has changed, different provisions have been brought in, but the goal here is to just approve what was approved originally and allow the property owners to continue with development of the lot that's basically sat vacant for the last 10 plus years.
And as far as the 4 tests are concerned, Mr. Clark?
So in terms of the 4 tests, does it generally meet the intent of the zoning bylaw? Originally, when it was 4 stories, it did not. It didn't meet the maximum height was being exceeded, and that was also in the secondary plan. So reducing the height to 3 stories, I think that brings the proposal into more general compliance with the zoning bylaw. Staff have indicated that the remaining variances don't seem to be of concern. So I would say the general intent of the zoning bylaw is being met through these variances. In terms of the official plan, again, speaking to the height, reducing the height brings us into conformity with the new official plan. To me, I mean, it meets the general intent of that. I don't think there was any other issues raised in terms of official plan compliance that we needed to address. Are the variances desirable and appropriate for the lot? We've looked at many different options. The community association has asked us about some different options that we could look at in terms of single dwellings, duplex dwellings. I think given the previous 2 long semi-detached buildings that were built, developing this lot as it was originally intended to be developed, minus of course 1 story on the building, is the most desirable and appropriate outcome for development here. I don't believe, you know, changing the plans completely to bring something new in would be more compatible with the neighborhood, because the majority of development is 2-3 stories in this neighborhood, and a single detached dwelling to me wouldn't fit in with some of the surrounding uses. In terms of whether the variances are minor, you know, minor is looked at in terms of not just the amount of variances, but the numerical reductions that are being requested. These are similar to variances that have been established on the 2 abutting lots. So in terms of appropriateness, I think that's appropriate to ask for similar variances for this lot. And in terms of minor, I mean, all the issues in terms of servicing, setbacks, landscaping, all those things have been addressed adequately. So I would conclude that this is a minor variance in terms of the 4 tests.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Clark.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilder, you had questions or comments?
Mr. Clark, you would agree that this lot is smaller than the other 2 lots, is that correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct, yes.
And that is why I have a real problem with this in terms of notwithstanding what's built adjacent to this, I still think that this may be considered overdevelopment. Notwithstanding the reduction of 1 story, considering the lot, and I had raised this last time, that I felt that perhaps not a semi, but you know, I understand it would not be in keeping with what else is on the next door. But in this case, on the smaller lot, a single would be perhaps a more viable use for this particular lot. I mean, I'm looking back at the comments from staff. They pointed out that, not that they're opposing this, of course, but they're saying that staff would encourage the applicant to provide additional amenity within the rear yard, as the proposed dwelling is planned for a lot smaller than required by the current zoning bylaw requirement, which would benefit future residents. I mean, obviously, this is not only a lot smaller than the 2 next door. Says, and I guess you've been looking at this, staff would encourage the applicant to provide a front yard setback closer to the alignment with the 2.55 meter required in order to adequately transition the massing of the long semis to existing homes on the east side of Sterling Avenue. You know, I still have an issue with the package of variances that you're looking for here. I'm just going to leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wilder. Ms. McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wonder, it probably would have been helpful to see these variances on this, or have you describe these variances as we were looking at the site plan, but I just, can you just tell me where this garden area is to be provided rather than in the rear yard? You're proposing a garden area. I just wondered if there's sunlight to that area or where that area is. Can you show us on the site plan? Or the other concern I had was with the side yard reductions, I guess.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So you can see on the bottom of the drawing there, there's an area that's outlined here and it says garden between units 3 and 4. It's outlined in a darker box there.
Is that area covered?
Yes, it's under the second story of the building. So yeah, it's similar to what the covered parking space would have been before. It's like an open area underneath the second story.
How are you going to grow a garden there when you have no sunlight?
Well, through you, Mr. Chair, I think the word garden is a little misleading. It's always been labeled as a garden on the plan. I don't think it's thought of to be like a vegetable garden or something like that. We're looking at it more as an amenity space, like an open area. So, you know, garden might not be the best description for that on the plan, but that's what's always been on the plan. So I apologize for misleading, but
yeah, the planning term is amenity open space.
Mm-hmm.
Anything more, Ms. McLean?
No, my other concern was with the side yards for the rear unit. You noted that one complies. I'm not sure which, is that the north or south complies?
Well, through you, Mr. Chair, the requirement is 1.2/0.6, which Mr. Hamilton can confirm, but I take that to mean 1.2 on one side and 0.6 on the other. I don't think there's a specific side that either of those has to be on. We're proposing 0.7 on one side and 0.6 on the other. So we're meeting one of the side yards in that variance. We're just not meeting the 1.2 meter side yard. So whether that's the north or south side, I don't know, maybe Mr. Hamilton could clarify, but I don't think there's any sort of specific yard that's referring to.
But on your site plan, you've dimensioned the side yard. So just to get an idea, is it that I'm having difficulty reading it, but is it the north side that you're showing at 0.73 or in the south, or just give me some directions on those.
Okay, give me 1 second, because I had a difficulty with north and south on this one before. So the north side would have 0.7 meters. The south side would have 0.6.
So you don't need, presumably, you don't, subject to Mr. Hamilton's confirmation, you don't need a variance for the south side. It's just the north side then.
Correct.
And in that 0.6 and 0.7 meters, can you put a ladder up to maintain the second and third floor or story or?
So the 0.6 meters is adjacent to the townhome with the driveway along the common lot line. So I believe there would be room there. Now, obviously we wouldn't want to be blocking the driveway, but I think someone could easily access that side of the building. And then on the north side, which is between the existing long semi-detached and what's proposed, there's also a 0.7 meter setback for the existing building. So there's 1.4 meters in between buildings. I know the staff that when we discussed access and getting into the areas to manage the lots and everything, they said that would be a sufficient setback.
But there's no easement or right of way given to allow you to go over onto somebody else's property. I'm not sure how that plays into this.
Well, there's 0.6 meters along the side. So presumably the other two buildings were approved at the same setback, and both have been able to function and operate sufficiently. So I don't see why there would be any reason to think that on the side where it is open and there is going to be no additional building on the abutting lot, that you wouldn't be able to get some access in there. Now, I don't know if there's going to be requirements for fencing or landscaping along that lot line. Maybe that could impact things, but at this point, I don't see any issue with that.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Anything further, Ms. McLean?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right, we have a number of speakers on the on the list today. Ms. Parrott from the Hindenburg Community Association, is she there?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
And
And
your
good
address,
afternoon.
your address for the record, please.
Yeah, 132 Bayview Station Road.
Okay, please proceed.
So we're opposed to the granting of these variances for the long semi on this property. And we feel that the changes that have been made since it came forward 2 weeks ago are not adequate, and this still represents overdevelopment. We submit that these variances do not conform to the general intent of the zoning bylaw. They're not minor in nature, and we don't believe they're desirable for the appropriate development of this property. 41E and F are very small, undersized lots. They were created 11 years ago under very different bylaws. And since that time, the bylaws have evolved, thank goodness, to address some of the negative issues created by developments such as this. As members noted, this lot is smaller than the other two to the north. And we understand it can be developed, but this proposal is too much building on a really tiny lot. And we did suggest to the applicant's agent that a single detached dwelling or an up and down duplex would be more appropriate, would reduce the number of variances required, and would just be a more appropriate development. We suggested lot consolidation of the property into one that would work better than this divided property. And if you could put up the one slide that I have, please. And I'll just continue, but the southerly side yard setback, the flagpole configuration for the long semi appears to be the main reason for the variance for the southerly side yard. And by redesigning and eliminating the long semi, the building could meet the 1.2 meter setback and would have less impact on the neighbors to the south. There's no fence proposed on the south, so the proposed garden is just 0.6 meters from and looks out onto the neighbor's common laneway and parking area. And that, when I looked at the plans, I believe that garden amenity area really belongs to the back lot, not the front lot. So I'm not sure that it's a shared space because it seems to be on one lot, not the other. The rear yard setback is just not appropriate anymore. So 11 years ago, the bylaw required a rear yard setback of 4 meters. The new bylaw requires a rear yard setback of 8.95 meters for this long semi. And that's a very significant change. So this request represents a 60% reduction in the rear yard. And this will have an enormous impact on the neighbors to the rear with the loss of privacy. So this is not minor. The windows at the back are very large. It's very close to the rear lot line. And the two long semis that were already created have impacted the neighbors behind. The rear yard area, the variances in 2011 requested a 3% reduction. The variances under the bylaw today request more than a 50% reduction. And again, this isn't minor. And we note the general notes on the revised plan still indicates a 4-story and covered carport, but that's just in the note part. We submit that this proposal represents overdevelopment of a very undersized lot. A smaller building envelope would still allow the property to be developed and would more closely adhere to the new bylaw requirements. So we submit these variances are not minor and they don't conform to the general intent of the zoning bylaw, and they're not appropriate for the development of this lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Parrott. I also have Wendy Sladen, 51 Sterling Avenue. Are you there?
Hi.
Hi there.
Hi, I'm Wendy Sladen. I live at 51 Sterling Avenue in one of the row house units immediately south of the 41E and F lot. Our driveway and backyard abut the property. This is a photo from Sterling of the proposed lot highlighted in yellow. Having lived here for 11 years, I understand the inherited condition of this lot creation. It is an undersized lot, and to develop it will likely require minor variances. While a long semi-detached dwelling may address a narrow lot, the proposed dwelling is inappropriately sized for this lot. And this is evident by the nature and extent of the variances, which range from 42 to 59% reduction in the zoning bylaw minimum setbacks. These are not minor variances. Next slide, please. The rear and side yard setbacks in particular will have a significant impact, as we have experienced with the existing long semis by the same developer at 41A and B and C and D, that are similar in design and have the same rear setback variances. This is a view of 41 C and D, which has a rear setback of 3.95 meters, and the yellow line points to the end of that lot. The size of these units is inappropriate for their lots, which are larger than the proposed lot under discussion. These units are an anomaly and do not respect nor reinforce the character of the existing neighborhood. And it is because of oversized developments like these that the zoning bylaw was updated. Next slide, please. This is the view from my yard that I share with 3 other homeowners. The yellow arrow points to the location of the southeast corner of the proposed building. The side and rear yard setback variances would permit a building that takes up almost 80% of the length of the lot. These variances do not provide sufficient outdoor space for residents at their base. They significantly reduce the permeable ground available for rainwater and snowmelt infiltration. They prevent the planting of trees, which contribute to greening of neighborhoods and CO2 sequestration, and they negatively impact the privacy and light available to the side and rear neighboring properties. Not only does this application fundamentally disregard the intent of the bylaw, it sets a precedent that ultimately questions its worth. It is not clear to me what the purpose of the zoning bylaw is when in situations like these, other solutions that are more in keeping with the bylaw are not pursued. This is an opportunity. An infill at an appropriate scale can and should be carried out for this lot. The original and present scheme is out of scale for the established lot, and a solution more in keeping with the intent of the zoning bylaw can and should be proposed. Just before I summarize, if you could go to slide 6. To answer a question regarding the streetscape, and as you can see, These two existing buildings in the center, 41A, B, C, and D, are quite oversized compared to the neighboring properties that you can see to the left, which is to the north and to the south of the Sterling Avenue. So if you could just go back to slide 5. Slide 5. This is slide 4. Thank you. This is a view from the rear neighbor on Pinney Avenue, and you're looking at where the unit will be. And if you look on the left side of the right-hand side of the image, you can see how far back the existing building is, and it's all windows looking right into the neighbor's yard. So if you can go to slide 4, I'll finish up. Thank you. So in summary, these variances are not minor. The rear and side yard setbacks will have a huge and long-lasting negative impact. The variances do not maintain the intent and purpose of the R4UB zoning bylaw nor the official plan, and the proposed scheme is not appropriate for the established lot. Finally, an infill that is at an appropriate scale can and should be carried out. And it's based on these reasons that I ask that the Committee of Adjustment reject this application for minor variances. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. That was very informative to have some photographic evidence.
I thought it would put it in context.
Yes, well, that's why we ask for contextual evidence. And we hope that eventually the development industry will realize that that is very useful when it comes to us making an appropriate decision. Anyway,
thank you.
Thank you for your input. Lastly, on the list of presenters, Heather Thompson, 44 Sterling Avenue.
Mr. Chair, I do not see Ms. Thompson online.
Okay, so Ms. Thompson is not there. All right. Okay. Anything in response, Mr. Clark? You've heard from the community association. You've heard from an immediate next door neighbor to where you're going to build.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I will reiterate the responses I gave to the community association. This technically, right now, this is 2 existing lots of record. This is not one lot as we keep referring to. Ms. Parrott did provide some useful information about consolidation of lots. Unfortunately, I don't think consolidation is possible here because these are both lots that were created by severance. I don't believe you can consolidate severed lots. Once a severance, always a severance. The only way to consolidate these lots back into one would be a lot addition consent application through the City of Ottawa. That's going to take time, of course. Now, if the lots are combined back into one, I mean, we could propose something different, but at the end of the day, the developer is just trying to get an approval in place for the sale of the lot. There's nothing to say that this is going to be developed in the end, which I know isn't probably the best thing to say, but otherwise, like, it's a really tough one. I mean, we don't really want to go through the process of combining the lots back into one or redesigning the whole development. We spent 4 years trying to get this reapproved. At no point did staff ever say that this was going to be an issue. We shouldn't be looking at this development anymore. So, I mean, we've put in a lot of work to get to this point. And I just, if this was a no-go from the start, then it would have been good to know that. Otherwise, I don't really have any other comments to add at this point.
You're saying you've been at this for 4 years, but the R4 zone amendments were made less than 2 years ago. And I'm sure you would have been well aware of the new zoning provisions.
Right. The original submission, the original submission was made well before the R4 zone change. There were holdups. There were things that we had to look at, which took time, and then the zoning changed, and it resulted in us, having to comply with the new zoning. So it wasn't intended to, this was intended to be approved like 4 years ago, is what I'm trying to say. It's just, with all the issues, because there were servicing issues and there were streetscape character analysis, landscape plans, trees on other lots. There were lots of things we had to look at here. So unfortunately, we just had delays in the process.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Clark. Ms. Sladen, we're done. We appreciate your input. We're going to, I think what we'll do is we'll reserve on this application. I'd like to thank everyone for their input. It's been a difficult process for some people, and our decision will be available in 10 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That is the last item on the agenda. That concludes this hearing of the Committee of Adjustment for the City of Ottawa for the 1st of June. Thank you very much for participating.